So how are you, man?
I am doing great. Yeah, I gotta say, I'm doing better in the last few days than I have been for a few weeks before that. So I'm nearing the end of my this project that's sort of kicking my ass, and
If you
I
don't
see a
mind
light at the end of the
asking,
tunnel.
if you don't mind me asking, what are you working on?
So I've been doing this for the last year. I've been working on this thing. It's called Hindsight 2020, and it's
Of course.
basically looking at the last, I guess, for like 15 years or so of kind of like a history of the internet told through the internet documentaries that have become so foundational. So, for example, there was an article, I believe from 2006 or 7, where Vanity Fair is talking about the film Loose Change, that 9/11 documentary,
Of
and they
course.
say, "Hey, this might be the first internet blockbuster." It's just it's sort of like a think piece.
Right.
Um, and I'm just sort of looking at it now in I because I started this in 2019, 2018, but just sort of looking at it like, okay, taking that idea, what does it say that the first real thing that's comes out of the internet as far as an art form that develops are these documentary films, particularly with a conspiracy bent and how that has informed everything that has come after it, and sort of putting it into context, um, and sort of seeing if we use that as our trajectory, what does that tell us about where we are, what have we learned, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, I've been following, yeah, your series. I was talking to Christopher Knowles, and I mean, I listened to your podcast and various things, but I was talking to Christopher Knowles, and he said you got to check out Alan's new series, and that I've just been blown away, man. So kudos to you.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's really exciting to hear, and you just to say you said you're familiar with my stuff, and I appreciate that, and I'm unfortunately, I feel terrible that I'm not as familiar, but that's why I wanted to reach out and do this call. Sort of when you sent it to me, I'm like, well, I can start digging into your material, but I just know right away that I'm like, well, there's so much overlap.
There
Um,
is, I think there is, yeah, and I've kind of long known that, and I don't listen to too many podcasts. I don't miss many of what you guys put out. I listen to Christopher Knowles and a few others, but there is a lot of overlap. You're correct, and I know. Now you started like, are you in New York, by the way? Is that where you're at?
I'm not currently, no. I mean, that's where
Okay,
I was born and raised in New York, and I left in 2013. Um,
okay,
yeah, my partner at the time, who was not from New York, she had agreed to sort of move there and stay there with me, and we were there for 5 years together. And then she was like, "Okay, I really have to get out of New York." I had never lived anywhere else, and I was like, "Well, it's all kind of the same to me. It's all new." And I don't know, starting at New York. I don't mean that like a pompous way, but it's like I don't know where do you go from there, right? That's a space that people usually go to.
right.
So I'm like, just let's figure it out. And I've been for the last 7 years been kind of dicking around the country, finding a place, trying to find a place that I fit in. So,
Yeah. Well, have you found one?
I think so, at least for a short while. I've been living in Richmond, Virginia, for the last oh 4 years, and I have to say it's a great town. All things considered, I've really enjoyed this place. I don't know that it's a permanent place, but it's been really good to me.
I haven't been to Virginia, I've heard good things.
May I ask where you are?
Yeah, I split time. Actually, my wife and kids don't like that we split time, but they mostly stay in Arizona, where I'm from, and that's where I'm at right now. I was born in Germany, but I we ended up in Arizona at a pretty young age, and but I of course the business being what it is, at least up to this point, I think it's all changing right now in a big way. as Hollywood burns, you know. But I've had to bounce back and forth between here and LA my whole career. I'm 45 now, but I'm kind of I don't have any love for the film industry as a whole, or you know, Hollywood. I'm kind of excited by, you know, the democratization of everything going on film wise, especially if you're a documentary filmmaker like I am professionally. You don't really have to be in LA anymore, which is that's kind of exciting, I think.
Sure. Um, yeah, I can only imagine what was already happening with all the streaming services and things like that, that the coronavirus, just sort of the pivot that was made of, I don't know, guys making the Daily Show and, Bill Maher's in his driveway and that sort of shit, where it's like, okay, well then do we all need to be in the same space anymore?
Correct. Yeah. And you know, I've long kind of operated out. I've never really operated within that system. I have agents and managers and things, but outside of that, really, I just kind of do my own thing. I have an, you know, a group of investors that's when the housing market crashed, 12 years ago, they sort of all decided that it'd be a good idea to invest in crazy documentaries. And that's what I sort
That's
of, but I do my best to keep money flowing back to them. That's the key. You know, then they do the next one. But yeah, man, I know you don't know a lot about me, but I kind of got my start. I was in high school in Arizona, and I senior in high school, and I wrote a screenplay. At the time, it was called A Single Bound. I don't know why. It had nothing really to do with Superman or anything, but I sent it to one actor, an actor that I had kind of long admired. It's in retrospect, it's kind of odd, even, you know, how this happened or what, but we sent it to an actor, Crispin Glover. Are you familiar with Crispin Glover?
very familiar. Yeah, I just I heard you tell this story in the link you sent me, and this is
Oh yeah, yeah.
just I mean, please tell it. Please tell it for the record. I was wondering if I could get you to tell it again, because and I'm gonna sort of dig a little deeper. So yeah, please.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, well, I'll, the I convinced my co-writer, who's also a high school student and friend, to send it to an actor. We sent it to we found out who his representatives were, and trust me when I say this, we didn't know jack shit about anything. I was nobody. We sent it into Crispin's agents, and surprisingly, they responded, and they, you know, it's common in that industry where for an actor to read a piece that you write, you have to make a monetary offer of some kind. So his agent said, "Hey, are you making our client a monetary offer?" And I just on the spot, I said, "Yes, we are." You know, I mean, we had no money. We weren't. I don't know. It's something about it. It was interesting. How it felt. I don't know. It felt like it was inevitable or something. But we sent the script over, and he responded to it. He got back to me within a short time. Called my family house. My mother answered the phone. Said, Ryan, Crispin Glover's on the phone for you, and it was. And from there on, we chatted. It was pretty quick. He asked if he could. He said he wanted to make the film. He wanted to direct it, and he asked if we could do a little rewriting, which that was done. And he asked if all the characters in the film could be portrayed by Down syndrome actors. So within 6-7 months out of high school, I was producing a film called What Is It? And it's sort of achieved some sort of cult status over the years, I think. Have you seen the film, or have you heard about what it's?
I've never seen it, much to my disappointment. I I don't know, 10 years ago, probably 15 years ago, as sort of going down these internet rabbit holes, in 2005 on, I did find clips from it, and of course, the trailer and stuff like that. I've watched a bunch of Crispin Glover clips around that time, and I have tried to sync up. I know he travels with that show, and I've sort of tried to keep my eyes and ears open, but it's never worked out that I've been able to see it. But it's something that has always existed in the back of my mind, is this fantasy of something I know is I'm I love David Lynch and sort of weird avant-garde film, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
I feel like that's so. It's just to say that film literally like exists in this weird sort of liminal space for me. So when I heard your story there, and just to be real, I didn't. I've been working on this project, and so you sent me this email, and I was like, okay, I could listen to this podcast, but I just saw like literally like 3 or 4 projects that you worked on. I'm like, okay, cool. I didn't catch the Crispin Glover thing. And then today, as I was getting ready for our show, I was like, all right, let's start listening to this other interview you had done and see what that was about. And I was just blown away. So that's really incredible, and that's an amazing start. And do you feel like that sort of opened the door to being able to do all these other projects in the future?
It definitely did. As an entree to kind of the film business, I couldn't have asked for kind of a better one. Just having experienced the industry from all different sides since then, I know that Crispin Glover really is a very unique, one of a kind individual, as if that's as if that was ever in question. The interesting thing is that, and I really wasn't, I was 18. I wasn't really thinking on this exact level at the time, but Crispin's reasons for making What Is It were kind of rooted in the Edward Bernays book on propaganda and everything going on with Crispin is just he was insistent and is still insistent on not taking any corporate money for any of his kind of art projects, and just to have that kind of, like when you don't know shit, I was into Werner Herzog movies and David Lynch at the time, and I wasn't, rock dumb or anything. I wasn't, it was just such a cool way to make a film, and be rooted in that is even better. The film is kind of polarizing. It can, offend some people, but generally it does not. It's really kind of spurned on some interesting conversation, and I think Crispin's fans understand where he's coming from. But yeah, that film sort of, it was there's this band of kids, not kids but teens, called the Kids of Whitney High. Are you familiar with them at all?
I am not, no.
Okay, yeah, we found a lot of our actors from there. Check out the Kids of Whitney High. They do some really incredible music. Most of the band has Down syndrome. They have a great song called Insects. They just kind of are. Crispin wanted to kind of, he had, and I don't know how much this plays into it. I assume a lot, but he had just done the film What's Eating Gilbert Grape with Leonardo DiCaprio, and I know he was, while I think that performance is genuinely regarded pretty highly, and Crispin, I know, agrees and loves Leo's performance. I think he kind of argued on that film with the director that role should be played by someone who had Down syndrome, and he lost that
actual representation. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, so he lost that battle, of course, but I think that carried into our project. But yeah, I'd be curious to see what you think of it. I've heard a lot of things over the years, and had, I've heard a lot of unique things. I know you'd have a great take on it, though. But you should see. I'm going to let you know when it comes to your town, and I'll get you with Crispin. You can kind of check out the film and let him know what you think.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. I know. I mean, I don't know what's. Are we living in a world where things are touring again? I don't know.
Yeah,
but
right. I know. You're so right, man. Yeah. Tell me what kind of reality have we slipped into here? What's going on?
That's an amazing question. This is maybe something you can speak to. I was trying to find the actual chart here. Maybe this is something you're aware of. Basically, uh, how can I explain this? There's a guy who made this data set where he plugged every film that's come out in the last 60 years or whatever, and tried to plug it into sort of grouping of genre and just create a little like map of what are the trends. Okay, we can see this is the rise and fall of the Western genre. This is the rise and fall of this genre. And it becomes this map that you can kind of trace all that information. And what's interesting to me is that you see there is this steady incline in the documentary format that really breaks out just at the turn of the millennium.
Oh, interesting.
And
I mean, no, you're saying you're talking about just this latest turn. Is that what you're saying? Or
yeah,
that's what I'm saying?
I knew I had it saved on my computer somewhere, and I'm looking on a second hard drive. Just look it up.
One thing, while you're looking up,
please go ahead.
Say, one interesting thing I've been doing lately is it's interesting to look at films, and I mean narrative films, not nonfiction films, but just your general narrative film. Even looking back at films, 10 years ago, it seems like, it's like looking at a dead culture. It's, I used to do this a lot, look at old films from the 20s and 40s, and even European films, German films, and it's a unique glance into a dead culture. Well, oh, you just sent me something. Okay, cool.
Yeah,
but even looking at films 10 years ago, it's starting to look, and I think that goes into exactly what we're saying. But go ahead. Did you found this list?
I found the chart, yeah, and this is just like a screenshot of one. If this does anything for you, you can actually go to this guy's site, and it is a completely interactive data set. You can like click through and actually expand and see what films are out that year and all that sort of stuff. It's a really interesting data set. But if you can just click on that screenshot, you can get a sense of how documentary stands out in this space.
Interesting.
Are you seeing that image?
I'm pulling it up right now.
Gotcha.
Interesting.
So, this can tell you a lot of, I mean, again, just for me, this is your question, going back to your question of like, what is this, what timeline are we in? For me, this could be seen as a kind of, an industry market research. Oh, what's hot right now? But I'm not looking at it that way. I'm looking at this as more of like what does this say about the zeitgeist in any given moment, right? Like, why is it that a war film, you could see that spike in war films, you could see a spike in all these things, but where are we at? Where we're at right now is we see this huge increase in documentary genre, but also thrillers and horrors. And there's something about facing a very, facing reality in this very different way is what that says to me. And this doesn't even include conversations of like quote unquote reality television and stuff like that. So I feel like there is something that is, I don't know, this postmodern era of becoming immersed in our media and it reflecting back on us.
It's so interesting because I'm totally aware of, I look back on my own career, and I sort of, right when I made the transition from working with Crispin into, I've always seen myself as a documentarian. Even before, I dabble in narrative film, and I've produced a couple and directed one that's coming out pretty soon, but called Queens of Country. But it's funny, I call in like the very first article on me, I spoke, and this is before like Survivor even hit. I was talking about the next wave was going to be reality television and documentary film, nonfiction programming. It doesn't, and obviously we can see that in this gentleman's chart. I do wonder, it doesn't feel like that right now. I mean, yes, we have the, you know, some of these cultural touchstones like the Tiger King, everyone's talking about. It's like water coolers, you know, talk almost. But does this feel like a time where we're sort of living in a, it doesn't, it almost seems like very non-reality based. I don't know. What do you?
Sure. Well, I think so. I would argue that we're getting an overdose of reality. So
Hmm.
we don't need to go to a documentary so much anymore, or even a, you know, again, reality television. That was always the, pretty much since its start, has been the joke of, oh, it's not real. But we're getting, through social media, I can see everybody I know's what they're eating for lunch, and, you know, their vacation photos, and I'm sort of, there is this, it's all of course filtered, just as the reality television isn't really reality, and a documentary, even the best documentary, is an approximation of reality.
Of course.
But I do feel like, that's what I'm saying. I feel almost like the this trend that you see is now, would now break beyond this graph that I'm showing you, and sort of saying, hey, now we have a president who is a performance artist in a lot of ways.
Right.
We have, you know, I don't mean to take this in a political direction, but just to say, like, there is our whole media environment that we interact with on a daily basis is based on this reality and distorted reality lens. I don't think that there's really a separation of this graph and what we're experiencing, except for where somewhere in there that fourth wall really just comes crumbling down. But I think this graph would sort of show where we started to go in that direction. And of course, as I'm saying, like, if we wanted to take this in a sort of literature type conversation, is you would have these ideas of what happens in a postmodern cultural society, where we're no longer talking in terms of a god or things like that. We're talking in terms of the writer, the author, just, there's been this slew of popular culture ideas of that we're living in a simulation, or all, you know, anything from the Matrix to, you know, what is that goofy Stranger Than Fiction and all of that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's, yeah, I think, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, where do you think art goes from here? I mean, you're an artist. It seems, I don't know. Have you been particularly inspired lately to do? And I'm talking about work kind of outside of, you know, maybe the sync stuff is going crazy. I'm assuming, right? That's like off the charts.
I mean, I am this. Let's be real here. The sync stuff. This project is my sort of getting the fuck out of it, or trying, at least trying for taking a real break again. I took a break for about 2016. I took a serious break from all this, and just the last year or so, I've been re-engaging with it, and it's something I can only do in small doses at this point. And I think part of that is this, I don't know, this insane sort of conspiracy culture has become mainstream and has become memeified. So we're in a situation where you can, I just to say, I don't know where you stand on this sort of stuff, but I didn't finish the episode of that podcast you sent me, but, you know, there's something like that Wayfair idea, right? Of like, okay, selling children through a website. Mm-hmm. This is something that, from a mainstream perspective, it was a 1.5 day news cycle story. and for my sort of sync idea, the way I take that is we experience Pizzagate, compressed and condensed down to 36 hours.
Right.
And it's this sort of Terrence McKenna-esque like compression of time. But what does that do? What is that? I don't think that's healthy for anybody. If it's real, then you're not helping these victims. And if it's false, then you're just swimming and sort of celebrating the horror. Again, going to this idea of like staring in abject horror of the abyss of what fucked up world we're living in, sort of splashing around and playing in the shit of it. I don't know that I see. Maybe I guess I'm pretty. I have a bleak outlook on a sort of overall societal trend,
Sure.
as far as what kind of art can be made in that. I think that's ultimately where art is a salvation for me, at least, as someone who sees a sort of overall bleak affair. That's when I retreat and embrace artwork. And I think the sync stuff has become so real and is so reality bending and is so unfortunately twisted into this mainstream conspiracy hysteria. And I want to be just careful how I say that. Is I consider myself a conspiracy theorist in certain ways. I'm certainly very interested. I've researched the shit out of JFK and 9/11 and all those things where it's like I'm so open to all these things. Again, it's the way in which information is distributed and filtered.
I'm exactly on board with what you're saying. So continue.
Yeah. Cool. I mean, I don't want to. I know, unfortunately, all this sort of stuff is triggering, right? Where it's people want you to be on board with whatever their conspiracy is at the moment, and I don't think it's a healthy situation. I don't think anyone is actually researching anything anymore. It's literally if it's a topic. You have a few sources that you trust for whatever reason, and you mentioned Bernays. I think this is a big part of it. But to say we have a few trusted information sources, whether that's if you're a guy who trusts the New York Times or you're a guy who trusts Alex Jones, either way, you're just getting your information source, and whatever they tell you, that's your reality tunnel. And I think I don't see people willing or interested in breaking out of any of those reality tunnels. And I feel like the way in which I've been engaging with this from a real perspective, from a sync perspective, is so tainted by that conspiracy. And again, this memeified conspiracy world where we're not, when the Wayfair thing happened, I see, if I go on Facebook that day and I see some people saying, holy shit, and then people who aren't even into conspiracies. So it's like, this is sort of another trend, another avenue, but to say almost like everyone is a conspiracy theorist now. Whereas 15 years ago, I was the crazy one for talking about 9/11. Now, random friends on Facebook can be like, holy shit, did you see about this Wayfair story? But they're not invested in it. They're not seeking justice or even truth. It's just it's a thing coming through, passing through. And I feel like that's dangerous on all sides. All sides of that is super dangerous.
You're so right. It feels like we're living in a world where, and by the way, your history aligns with my own, but it feels like we're living in a world where all theories have come true, but yet kind of no one is, they just exist as just fodder for the mill or something. I don't know. No one's doing anything about it. There's no justice being sought. It's like, even my my grandmother the other day literally was talking to me about, about the Wayfair thing. By the way, I didn't weigh in either way on Wayfair. The previous podcast I did, which I enjoy that podcast a lot, but I was simply talking about Kubrick's use of human furniture in Eyes Wide Shut that a lot of people hadn't even been aware of, and the whole Wayfair furniture thing. So, but I have no idea whether the Wayfair thing is true. If it's at all true, of course it's god awful, and we should all be, tearing down. We should all be joining the rioters in Portland, I guess. But
well, we're in a moment where there's an overwhelm of outrage, right? Where if I again, how does this not come to a head in some way? Because either we all just have our fucking mental breakdown, or we burn it all down, or something. It's there was a Dave Chappelle special he did a few years ago, where he talks about he's like, I basically, one day we're upset about this, the next day this, next day this. And he's like, and he makes the point, it's not that these are like things not to be upset about. It's just like, how do you keep track? How do you focus? So if I go back 15 years, I could say, hey, there was a point where, 9/11's an inside job, and we all get on the same page, let's say, and we go, great, now let's try and put George Bush and Dick Cheney in prison and focus on that and whatever it is. And within a few years, it's suddenly like, but what about the Freemasons? What about the Illuminati? What about these guys? Okay, and you sort of branch out. Oh, what if there was no airplanes? What if there was this? The conspiracy itself breaks down. The truth breaks down. Suddenly there's a whole other world of conspiracies out there, and that focus is no longer solidified. And if I tried to seek justice for everything I was outraged by on a daily basis, I wouldn't have time to eat or breathe or shit or anything. Like, right. We live in a moment where I'm constantly outraged. I could see videos of police beating people. I can see evidence of children being trafficked. I can see it's like, where do I even begin? And I think there is, maybe this is a conspiracy theory in itself, but I feel like there's something about fanning these flames because it either creates hopelessness or chaos, and either of those things are great methods of control. And even if it's not intentional, again, it's sort of having that effect. So
I was just going to say, yeah, just in hearing, and kind of listening to us have this conversation, it feels orchestrated. It has to be. If it's not, it's a byproduct that is something that is desirable for the powers that be, I guess you'd say. But I was going to say, going back to a previous point, there has to be like the ultimate sync film from Alan Abadessa. I mean, you have to make that film, my friend.
I don't know what that would be, but yeah. Well, so sorry, I went on this sort of rant about reality is to say, you asked what is artwork, and what's the future of artwork. And for me, at least for me personally, my intention is to go back into some fiction, and I think just even to take some control and sort of ground myself. So it is my intention, once I finish this film, to work. I have this other project lined up, and I just want to do some fiction work for a little while, and that of course doesn't mean I will stop being. Will still be an active participant in society and reality, and so it's not like all those problems go away. I just mean that I don't know. I can only stick my finger in the electric socket of this insane moment of history for so long at a time. I feel like I need to like step back a little bit and be like, okay, ground myself in I don't know, the sort of archetypes and explorations that are I miss. So I've done nonfiction writing and fiction writing, and you I'm sure as a documentarian you get this of every sentence I want to put down on the page, and we'll have to then verify. okay, I really want to make sure this is true before I say it. I know I've done my research, but if I'm gonna say this line, let me just make sure I've got my 5 backup sources or whatever. And I miss the days of like, oh, I could just write freely and
So,
say, Joe walks to the store, and it's like, well, fuck it. If I say so, then it happened.
I totally get where you're coming from too. I feel the same way. I mean, it's I don't know what the next step is. It's I could just, I guess, keep plotting, keep chugging along with what I'm doing. I tend to make films on interesting people who have, interesting ideas. But my first big documentary was on the kind of the godfather of the synthesizer, Bob Moog. I'm sure you're familiar with him, the Moog synthesizer.
Yeah, when I lived for about a year and a half in Nashville, North Carolina, right across the street from the
Oh man,
factory there. Yeah.
I was there. I mean, we spent a lot of time there in Asheville. Yeah, it was. We really enjoyed shooting there with Bob, and Bob passed. He died kind of right as soon as we were done filming. But he was kind of a second figure in my life that was extremely influential. And Bob Bob's talks. He speaks in our film about how he feels ideas are floating around out there, and you kind of tune in and grab them and stuff. And a lot of that's introductory stuff. But for me as a young filmmaker, it was really cool to work with him, and he's a true genius. And it was. I hope our film does him some justice. But
You also did a film called The Heart is a Drum Machine. So
I
do you
did.
have, and you also did something with Maynard. So is your interest in sort of a more electronic music? Is that sort of
Or just music in general, I'd say.
okay?
I'm not a musician, but I've just always been a huge admirer of musicians and always worked in me. I produced the Death Clock album, the cartoon on Adult Swim, brilliant cartoon. I don't think it's no longer, but yeah, I love music, man. And Heart as a Drum Machine, we took kind of 100 artists from across all genres of music, and everything's kind of had them speaking, kind of mystically about music. I just watched this thing from. Have you been following? Oh, but let's stay on track. But I want to know if you've been
Oh
following.
no, hey man, just go for it.
It's
Say
free.
what you want to say. Yeah.
Oh, good. Have you? Do you follow Chris Knowles' Liz Fraser stuff?
So just to say, I did. I'm very aware of the topic. I have not paid attention to Knowles' stuff in the last, I don't know, few years, but that's just because I think the way I'm consuming media and my living situation is so drastically different than it was. I'm just not as plugged in as I was to that world.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I was a big, uh, close follower of Knowles's work leading up to that, and I'm very, very aware. I remember actually the day I'm tracking all this sort of King Kill mythology. This is really my go-to motif that sort of fascinates me, and
Me too. Yeah.
I think it was. I hope I'm getting this right. It was the night of that the impeachment was announced, whether it was the impeachment proceedings or the actual charges being filed against Trump, was the night that Liz Fraser did this massive attack reunion in D.C.
I believe.
And I literally like I saw I was working as a bartender, and I'm like literally at the bar, and I have some guys who had just come from the show in DC talking to me about it, and I'm like, wait a second, and I just grabbed my phone and messaged Knowles right away. I'm like, okay, what's going on here?
It's interesting, yeah. And she played Radio City Music Hall with Massive Attack again, and she was touring along with. What's so interesting is she was touring along with these. There's a filmmaker, Adam Curtis, out of the UK, really interesting documentary filmmaker. He was putting together all these, apocalyptic imagery to the music, and just really loud, really in your face, rioting and police brutality stuff and all. I mean, talk about a harbinger of what's to come. I mean, what has come. It's pretty incredible. Chris took a bunch of video from it, and it really called out what was to take place just a few months later.
And now I know they just did that, like what they were calling it, like a video EP or something. There's like 3 songs that were just released.
Oh, did they really? I didn't see that yet. Okay, I'll check that for sure. It's probably that material from Adam Curtis, I'm sure.
I think, let's see. They did 3 different, it was 3 songs. It is someone speaking throughout. And one is someone talking about, oh Jesus, like maybe like the climate crisis, and one is talking about a financial crisis, and one is talking so on. So it's 3 different pieces. Each has its own video work. Each has its own subject matter, but they're like really specifically content heavy in the sense of it's less about the music and more about the information.
My pretension bells are ringing, but it's like I don't know. Everything in context, given the Noel stuff, it plays out a little differently. I don't know, but when bands sort of go in that direction, I don't know. The art sort of falls away. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I feel like there'd be a way to write a song about it. But that's my own pretension of telling someone how to make their art. So I don't, it's, if it gets, in one way, if it gets information out there, then they're doing a great service. But I do feel like it's more as an avenue for information than it is an avenue for, the muses. I feel myself, even with the current project I'm working on, it's so real. Again, it's kicking my ass. I feel almost like the film Amadeus, where it's like working on the really dark material just drains the life out of me. But
your stuff is brilliant, man. It's just thinking on this level that most people will never get to, but it's calling out at the same time. It's calling out so many things that are just right there that we should be seeing, but it's connecting these dots that should be connected for everyone. I mean, I don't know what your latest one is on, and I can't wait to find out, but I've followed all the others, and
thank you. Yeah.
But it's like, it's with art. I mean, there's a long, wonderful history of politically oriented art, and that's a beautiful thing. And like, we're all into positive outcomes for those kinds of things or whatever. But there also is this other school of art that maybe I always have one foot in, where it's like you never want to be too on the nose with it. I don't know. I sort of come from that school. Even if I'm having even with my films, yes, I'll have Maynard, give his opinion on things, and we guide him and everything. But he has his own things he wants to talk about too. But you never want, it's kind of nice that I like films that never kind of hit you over the head. That's really important. I think with documentaries, we're used to, and I do, by the way, I do view you and your work in a totally different category, but than like a Michael Moore, where you kind of know where the filmmaker's coming from moment one, and you feel the exact same way at when the film credits roll. You're doing something that's mystical and out of this world, and everything's kind of coming into your mind, and these connections are being made, and you're going, oh wow, and you have a totally new view about certain things when you leave. That's a different kind of art I'm talking about. But this art that, and I don't know about Massive Attack. Massive Attack's cool, I've enjoyed them more than I've enjoyed Muse over the years, and with the whole idea of I think his name is Robert, the guy in Massive Attack who probably, is doing graffiti all over the world at the same time, for those who are talking about, so that adds a whole other thing to that band. Is that do you believe that one, by the way?
I'm certainly open to it. Yeah.
Yeah, is Banksy in Massive Attack? I mean, probably, right? I mean, someone kind of correlated all the Massive Attack stops with where Banksy was putting out his new his newest and latest. So it that seems pretty compelling.
Yeah, I've seen that, and I'm certainly open to it. Again, I don't think I don't have an opinion on it.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I get where you're coming from. That it's like to say, hey, these are major, I don't know, cultural touchstones. I don't know if they're as, no pun intended, if they're as plugged in as they once were in the sense of, I mean, at this point, a 16-year-old with a TikTok could have more of a cultural reach than Banksy.
Right.
I mean, that's
interesting. Yeah, yeah.
it's
That's
like
crazy.
we focus on these huge artists and be like, well, what? Again, we live in this world where, and that's what I get that like sort of documentary space is well now that teenager can reach millions and millions of people and influence them in a way that we're just not prepared for or not expecting. So
I literally go out and do what I normally do in my career, which is every one of my films, I kind of tour them around, and I sort of learned that off of Crispin, who still to this day tours the first film. What is it we did together? But with these docs, it's so like you say, it's even if you like say do a Netflix deal and premiere on Netflix and you get a little buzz. I mean, everything seems like it's over, with our news cycle. So I don't know what I'm fighting against. It's probably old school. I can't even do it right now in the current climate. But I mean, at least touring around, you feel like you're sort of, meeting people, connecting with people, ideas are being connected. But
oh, that sounds incredible. And just to say, if I may, just
yeah,
I have to imagine by touring something is not only getting someone who's interested, but by actually the physicality and the intimacy of something like that is to say, hey, you're actually going to pay attention. If you're watching this documentary for an hour and a half, you're
exactly.
actually going to pay attention and engage with the information in a way that's not like, let's be real. Holy shit, three new Massive Attack out, songs where they were just somewhat disappointing, but also the way in which I took them in was disappointing. I'm sitting on, I was on my phone. I'm like, oh, cool. Let me hit play and hear that. This is not the proper way to take in. I'm an old enough guy that it's like, I remember buying the album, on the bus ride home. I'm looking through the liner notes and I'm getting ready and I'm reading through the lyrics and the photos and I'm getting into this headspace, and then I go home and I listen to the thing, and that's how you listen to an album.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is the way. And who's doing that anymore? Who's able to do it? It's sad.
Who's able to do it? Yeah.
But yeah, that's you hit the nail on the head. That's why we have toured all of our films around, and they ultimately, play on network too. We've played. I've had several films play on Showtime and PBS, a couple of films, but it's still I enjoy more just setting aside a couple month time period and just roll around the country, film festivals, and just four-walling. We four-walled as much as we've done festivals, because you actually more focus on the film that way, and just having the filmmakers there. I always appreciated it when I was younger and coming up, and there'd be a filmmaker come to in my case, Arizona State University area. There's an art theater, and I'd always go down and check it out, and they'd speak after. You do engage in a much more substantial way than just like that, especially now, and it's a whole new world anyway. If you how we oftentimes watch documentaries even on as they roll by on Netflix or whatever, and we're not even fully engaged there. So it's a weird time, man.
It's definitely a weird time. I'm glad, like, I don't know what else is sort of returning to your original question of like, what art do you make in this time, is to say, I struggle with that to a certain extent, but I also know that it is the thing that feels the most real to me is when I'm creating any of these things. So Maybe we're living in different space. You have to answer to an investor somewhat.
I don't know. My
Oh,
investors are, yeah, that's the whole thing is again, I harken back to when I was coming up. I made my first couple films without any oversight by financial people, and that was at Crispin's insistence. And I've sort of carried that throughout my career. But I have a bunch of investors that I keep happy. They don't have any say over any subject matter.
sure. Oh, that's yeah. Well, that's sorry. And just to say that's
No, I mean, people
sorry.
do. You're right. Most filmmakers, don't have the luxury of being able to kind of make what they want. It's very rare. I know mine, I'm sure, has a lot to do with, some of my best friends have been, investing in my films. Jason Stahl is one. He's my very best friend. He's invested in most of my films. So it's a different deal. But I can't imagine making a film where you have to kind of, oh boy, that gets a little, that gets scary.
I think being in this weird internet, and particularly this kind of this overlap with the conspiracy culture, I found that really uncomfortable because
Yeah.
the final video I'm making now is to say that there were very specific sort of, I don't know, things that you had to go along with, and so anyway, I just immense respect, and if you're able to just make what you want to make without having to answer to anyone, that's fantastic, because I've just seen how poorly that goes.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this, that of course I'm comfortable. My family and I are comfortable. We're not loaded, we're not butt loaded. And there were certain decisions made early in my career where I could have gone that way.
Right.
It's what you're describing right now, that taking place within conspiracy culture, that's long happened outside of conspiracy culture. Many filmmakers have, quote unquote, sold their soul to the devil early and often, but I don't know. It was more important to me and I'm not patting myself on the back either. It just seemed more, uh, I could make more interesting films if you stayed a little bit smaller, and my budgets aren't huge. I mean, they're in a couple $100,000 kind of zone for each film. And, they turn a profit mostly, and that's
Well, can
it.
you tell me, maybe we can transition instead of talking in abstracts. Can you tell me a little bit about, I'm really curious. Uh, so you have two JFK documentaries that I see here. One is King Kill 63 and one is Dallas in Wonderland. Can you speak to me
Yeah,
about that? I know nothing about them, and I'd love to know.
sure. Yeah. Okay. So King Kill 63 is a film that I kind of partnered with a gentleman I greatly respect, Joseph Green. We this is right before everything kind of like uh, this kind of fell into this new reality that we're in right now, and that's my honest assessment. We started making this film, and and we even screened it once at the Texas Theater at the Dallas International Film Festival. Really fun being at the place where Oswald was arrested and screening right there. That film, though, even back then, I knew that it had to change, and that's what process it's going through right now. It had to kind of expand out to. Even that film was made in a culture that feels dead to me now. We're no longer there. That those will all be part of the film that is going to be that we're literally working on right now and coming out in a different thing. Dallas in Wonderland was an interesting project. It's a failed project. It shouldn't have been failed. We got all the way to the end with it, but that was I wrote that script with Adam Parfrey. I don't know if you know who he is. He ran Feral House Press.
Sure. Yeah. I know that.
Okay, yeah, I wrote a number of scripts with Adam. He was a great friend, one of my best friends. We wrote, who's since passed, but we right kind of in the heyday of Feral House, we wrote a bunch of scripts, and some based on project that they ultimately were made, like Lords of Chaos. We co-wrote that script. That was taken on by another director and kind of changed, but Adam and I and Hans Fielestad wrote that script. But Dallas Wonderland was a project that was really about I mean, I'll put it this way. It featured James Shelby Downard as a main character. Okay. This film should have been made. We had we got all the way to the end. Literally, we had Ben Kingsley attached to play Downard. Okay, now tell me you don't want to see that, right?
I want to see it. Yeah, oh yeah.
I mean, yeah, we had Ben Kingsley signed on to play James Shelby Downard. Nick Cage was coming on to play the lead, and we were.
Can I ask what character was the lead?
Yeah, his name was Mac Temple, and he was the lead guy. He was a documentary filmmaker, and he was um, sort of hired by the powers that be to document the 50th anniversary of the JFK assassination.
Gotcha. Okay, so he would have been a fictitious character.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
Gotcha. Okay.
It was sort of going to blend, documentary and fiction, but it was mostly fiction. It was all scripted. And if for those out there who know and enjoy Adam Parfrey's work, it's filled with all that stuff. I mean, this would have been the most esoteric, occult sync film ever made, literally. I truly believe that. And Nick was totally on board. He was going to bring his, and this was right before his resurgence, really. I mean, I've always loved Nick Cage, and going way back. Yeah, his films right before he started making good ones again. He went through a little bad stretch, so to speak, but he still rules, man. And Mandy proves it. If that's not one of the better films made in the last 10 years, I don't know what is. But
is that new Lovecraft film?
No, not that one. No, I haven't seen that one. I don't know about it. That's called Color Out of Space.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yeah.
Mandy. Have you seen that?
No.
Oh man, you got to see it. You will love it. It's you just take my word for it. Go see it. It's Nick Cage. Just it's one of the most interesting films I've ever seen.
Okay.
Cool. But Nick was like totally down. He was way into the JFK conspiracy stuff, and we were going deep with that stuff too. We weren't, a lot of that material obviously is, and I know you went deep on it. I spent 5 years going deep on it, but we got into the kind of more out stuff in there, like the Oswald doppelganger material but the ending, it kind of, I'll share with you the script. I think you'd appreciate it, just if being a lover of sync stuff and
yeah,
share with you. But that film should have been made. Honestly, it's just one of those things that happens in this industry. I was working with, obviously I had to go with a larger group of investors outside my comfort zone, because the budget was, 15 million or something. I've made a $4 million film. I've never made a $15 million film. So we had to go out to a group of larger investors, and I couldn't even tell you what happened. There's so many little things you don't even quite know about, and they have to do with tax credits and this and that, and it's just part of the business. But we stayed true to our material, and it would have been, I think I've been proud of it had we made it. I was set to direct, and we had our cast, and it just slipped away. It was weird that the 50th anniversary was coming up too fast. I think that was a lot of it, to be honest.
I can imagine, yeah. So can I ask, when you said about King Kill 63, it sounds like you said you were sort of reimagining that currently. Is that what you're...
That's exactly what's going on, yeah. And it's part of the thing I wanted to chat with you about at some future time in the next week or so. But
do you want to promote that on a podcast, or you want to hold that for a private conversation?
I mean, I think everything that's been set up to now, I think we probably don't it's fine with me, but maybe not even. I don't even. It doesn't bother me if it's out there. I haven't said anything really about it. So, but I think in general, we should hold it. It is a film that was released, and it is being changed. So I don't mind that comes out, because it's going to be revamped. I mean, outside of a small part that's on the Kennedy stuff, and an epic interview with Oliver Stone, that's like a 3-hour-long interview where he went deep on sync stuff, and I mean all kinds of stuff he hasn't talked about anywhere else.
Wow. Okay.
We're really going in the sync direction, and I just think like if we should plan out a meeting, between the three of us. I got to see when I can get out there, but yeah, and I don't know exactly what's going on in your neck of the woods with the whole COVID stuff, but nothing's closed down, right? Like people.
Correct. Yeah. Actually, I mean, I've been taking it seriously. And I mean, just to say, so again, I mean, I was working as a bartender. I we closed. I guess it was a month ago. Um, they were, reopening things, and we're doing all this sort of stuff. And my bar called me, and okay, we're going to be reopening. Cool. And I went back to work, and we were there. I was there for 2 weeks before a coworker got it.
Oh
Someone
no.
tested positive, and we closed again. And they have since, it was only the one person got it. Luckily, we all, I basically spent 2 weeks worried. I went and, everyone had to go get tested and all that sort of shit. Luckily, I didn't get it, and everyone's fine. But if we can't make it 2 weeks without someone getting it, it's like, so basically my plan has been to finish this final episode of this series, and which I actually am, I don't know, 7 to 10 days away from being. My hope, if I'm real with you, my hope is to have it out actually August 9th. I don't think, but anyway, 7 to 10 days is a more realistic time frame.
Yep.
And then I'll
everything.
figure.
So,
What
you're
was
just
that?
editing it right now? You're editing it right now?
Yeah. So I'm in the final stretch, and then I'll sort of figure out what I'm doing from there. But just to say, as far as like the coronavirus situation, is that things are, I think, kind of how they are around the country, is that there's these little flashes and there's no huge outbreak and there's no huge restrictions, but it's clearly not contained. And
It's so odd. Being in Arizona, my wife just read to me from the newspaper today that 24% of people being tested in Arizona right now are testing positive, and it's allegedly exploding here like nowhere else in the country. Of course, I don't know one person who has it. I haven't seen any signs of it anywhere. It's an odd thing. That's part of this unreality thing going on. We keep hearing these things, and yet clearly no one around anywhere I go is affected by this. It's strange, man. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing. So right, so I have to say, as a guy who's fairly, again, I think of myself as a sync guy, not a conspiracy guy.
Yeah, I do too.
Right.
Yeah, that's what,
but I am, there's a lot of overlap there.
Of course.
And so I'm fully aware of all this sort of, I don't know, conspiracy theories around COVID, and even just, or sort of like the disbelief, and all these sorts of things. And I have to say, I get that. And also, whereas a lot of people are saying, I don't know anyone who whatever, I do. And so my mother, who works for her, had two coworkers die.
Wow.
Before they were here's the thing. So this the other side of the conspiracy here. To me, there's a conspiracy for mega corporate powers to keep this fucking quiet. Is that so? My mother, who has now been transferred out of that space, mind you, but her desk was right next to the manager's office, and she hears on the phone the manager talking about, oh shit, okay, someone who was here. Do you remember there was the earliest cases? There was this guy in Westchester who went to like a synagogue and got like a bunch of sick.
I do remember that. Yeah.
All right. Excuse me.
Bless you.
So thank you. That guy's wife was in my mom's office few days before,
Wow.
and the bosses are on the phone and they're talking about what do we do and how do we handle this situation and all these sorts of things. And my mom is, so now she's fully aware that, okay, we've all been exposed.
Yes.
Two things. One is she kept waiting for them to tell everyone. She's like, well, I'm sure they're going to make an announcement, blah, blah, blah. They never made a fucking announcement,
Wow.
right? They never fucking told anyone. The other thing is that you want to talk about human furniture. They had to make a decision. What do we do about, we know all the rooms this person was in and all this sort of stuff. And they just call their regular cleaning lady.
Oh man.
Like, well, have her go in there. The conversation that the person says is, well, I don't want to go in there, and who do we send to clean it up? So they just call the fucking cleaning lady and be like, hey, can you just kind of clean around in here? It's it's a little bit dirty in there. Can you make sure you
No hazmat suits or anything? Just straight.
Right, exactly. So it's okay to put this, poor minority at risk. You stay in your fucking office. You fucking take off. Send the cleaning lady in to fucking handle it. And who cares? And like, this is the world. This is my perspective on this sort of thing. It's like we are. What are we taking seriously? Whose health do we take seriously? And so, just to say, I have a really different perspective. So, like, is that she's waiting and she's freaking out. She's on the phone with me and she's like, what do I do? And I'm like, well, don't fucking go back to work. Like, just call out sick or fucking something, or demand they, whatever. And she's like so close to retirement, and she's like, I can't, have that argument and all this sort of stuff. And anyway, so that's that. Then my again, all my family's in New York, so I mean, I know my two people my brother worked with died. A guy that I worked with years ago on an art project, he didn't die from it, but he was hospitalized for an extended period of time, seriously ill from it. And then so when I'm here in Virginia and everyone's like, oh, it's just the flu, and it's like, it's not that big a deal. And I don't know, it's not something that keeps me up at night, but I gotta say,
You're concerned.
Yep. I'm concerned. I'm concerned from all sides, because the idea that, like, hey, is it overblown? Certainly our media does that. We see that with a fucking snowstorm. We see that with everything. We live in an age where and again, the immediate reaction is, oh, here's a coronavirus. The reaction from politicians of how do we plunder as quickly as possible, both financially and robbing people of civil liberties and all this sort of stuff, that is so real. And so I get the sort of overall skepticism and all that sort of stuff. But I also know that it reminds me of, so again, I'm from New York City after 9/11, right? So like on the day of 9/11, I was living in Queens. I'm across the river. I'm basically fine, but I could see, I have some footage that I shot that day. It was really shitty footage, but just sort of, here's just smoke coming across the river. I spent the next weeks of my life where it's like the whole city smelled, burnt toxic fucking waste. I had to go to multiple funerals. I know multiple people who worked there who had to flee that building, all that sort of stuff. And then 10 years later, I find myself in this conspiracy culture where people are like, well, have you ever considered that maybe it was like a hoax and that like it was all just like a staged event and nothing happened? And I'm like, nope, never considered that. You know why? Because I fucking saw it and smelled it and I went to the fucking funerals. Like, no, didn't. And there's something about this coronavirus which reminds me so much of 9/11 in the sense of I think New York is so big a few thousand people dying in New York is just like, it's like this like number, and it's used as a, can be used as a rallying cry, or it could be used as a political thing one way or another. But I sort of, my reaction when this whole coronavirus thing was happening and everyone was like, oh, it's a hoax, it's a hoax. And I'm like, it just gave me this like real flashback to, okay, so once again, my city is fucking the sacrificial victim for politicians who want to fleece it, and a bunch of people who want to shrug it off. I'm like, well, it didn't affect me, so it can't be real. And I'm like, I don't know, man.
No, yeah, and I'm just for the record, I'm certainly not saying that. It's just
I
that,
know, I know.
yeah, I totally uh, can appreciate that it is affecting people. It's just weird not to something to be called a pandemic, at least in my hood, and I don't see any evidence of it. But that is not to say that it's not affecting people all over. It's I did note that I found it pretty cruel that the feds just took away the $600 unemployment stimulus thing. Just didn't agree on that, and I'm not on unemployment, but it just having that yank that away from people. I think it's about to get real nasty.
I
I think
agree, yeah.
it's going to take a turn and be more of this rioting and all that, and maybe that's what's desired. I don't know.
I mean, I gotta say, yeah, I mean, in a space where we live in this really weird moment where I see more outrage about people getting unemployment than I see outrage about Trump bailing out cruise liners, than I see outrage over politicians selling stocks, when they declared, oh, this is fine. Um, I, I, I feel like there is this politicized outrage and controlled and directed outrage for sure. Um, but I gotta say, I mean, if billionaires can keep profiting in this situation, if major corporations are doing just fine, and we can't find the money to give to actual people, when those people burn down a fucking Target, I'm not gonna shed a tear. Um, and yeah, I don't know. That's a whole other sort of direction. But just to say, I have, again, I think I have more sympathy at this point for I feel like this coronavirus situation has really laid bare what, and I don't mean, it's not like it's not some Illuminati. It's literally just people of a certain, I don't know, social status, financial status, corporate investment. I don't know what, there's a sort of general overall sense of essential workers are not particularly something worth worrying about. We can, as long as they keep the machinery working, so I can sit home and and ride out this pandemic in peace, or oh, these people aren't working, let's take their unemployment away, or all these sorts of situations. For me, just again, I don't want to make this a political thing, is to say, for me, I'm much more sympathetic to outrage over those things than outrage over I don't know, do I have to wear a mask at the supermarket? That's, to me,
Yeah.
that's an inconvenience, and it's, whether it's effective or not can be debated, but it's such a minor inconvenience, yet we have massive protests and outrage over it, and not a single fucking tear is shed over thousands of people dead for I don't know.
Yeah, no, you're. I think that, yeah, that just goes into, I don't know, is Did I see today that Virginia is on the rise too, or am I wrong?
We've been considered holding steady, is what they consider us. I think overall we're okay. And again, I don't know I don't know what to make of it. I think none of us can know the real extent, and hiding that information, whether that's one side of the conspiracy is that the CDC is blowing these numbers out of proportion, and then now we have where we're supposed to expect Trump and My Pillow guy to give us accurate numbers. It's like
Right.
I don't. I don't necessarily trust either of those numbers. So what can I do? What can I do in that situation?
That's the problem with this. The kind of the era we're living in right now is that who do you trust, really? You can't. We're living in a time when you can't really trust anything, and that's why it's so important to have these people that you can look to in these times like this. And it's certainly not our politicians.
Oh yeah, for sure. I don't know. So it's that's why, like I said, for me, I'm in a space where I'm like, okay, I think that this is it's a moment of transition for me, realizing that if this is real in any way, no one is going to try and help us. There's no politician coming to save us, whether it's financially or intelligently. I don't want a vaccine. It's not. I'm not. Again, I want to be. I don't know how deep you want to go here, but to say like, I'm not. I don't have a specific sort of angle other than I really feel like the true colors have been shown of what are we worried about here, and it seems like for the most part we're worried about the stock market. We're worried about a broken window at Target, and I got to be real. I'm not concerned with either of those things.
Are you concerned with taking a vaccine?
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Just to say, before I was even a conspiracy guy or a sync guy or even a bartender or anything, years ago, I worked a job that I started when I was in high school. I worked my way through. I spent 8 years working as a pharmacy technician. I worked within the pharmaceutical industry. I worked for insurance companies, did all sorts of, I worked like really specific cancer and transplant meds. And I left that industry because I realized how horrific the pharmaceutical industry here is. It's not, has nothing to do with health, and it's I feel like it does a lot more harm than good. I remember like sitting down, so working, you would have these regularly someone who's going to school to be a pharmacist. You have to do your internship at an actual location. So it would be my job. Hey, today we got this new intern starting here, and they're gonna, kind of train them and all this sort of stuff. And I at some point, this was my activism, was I would say to these kids, and kids, I wasn't much older than them, but to say, hey, can you grab your textbook for me? And like, because they usually have their book bag with them, like, hey, can you do me a favor? Can you grab me your textbook? I'm curious what you're reading. Okay, cool. Let's look at like that second page and let's look in that fine print, and who's the publisher of your textbook? Oh, Merck Pharmaceuticals wrote your textbook? Interesting. Okay, now let's come to this shelf. What products does Merck manufacture here? Don't you think it's interesting that like the people who sell the thing are telling you, if they have this illness, you prescribe this medication. It's literally just they're training you as salesmen for their products. They're not training you to be a health professional. You
Are you
know,
familiar with, I'm forgetting his name, but there's a gentleman that's kind of making the rounds. He's a doctor. I wish I remembered his name, but he's kind of speaking about, how viruses are transferred, and if it's if it's an exosome situation where, we don't truly person to person spread viruses. Are you familiar with that, doctor?
not that doesn't ring a bell for me. I mean, I'm familiar with a lot of
A
there's
lot. He's done a lot
that
of.
sort of.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I was just saying I'm familiar with that sort of line of thinking or that sort of material, but not there's no specific person that I'm thinking of.
I just bring that gentleman up because he sort of made the rounds on various podcasts and things and on. But I was wondering, you having worked in, as you did in the field, what do you make of that kind of, thought process that viruses aren't, they're not transferred in the way that we think they are or taught they are.
I don't think I'm educated enough to really comment on virology, but I can say that I don't trust what I can say, what I'm educated enough to say, is that a major corporation and a billion and billion and billion and billion dollar industry that has proven that it has no interest in keeping us healthy or taking our health seriously isn't really what I want as the go-to answer for it. Let's say this is a real health crisis. Let's just skip like that part of the like it's a hoax or it's overblown or whatever. Let's say even if it's not this, let's say there is a real, history has shown there are real fucking periods of history where we get sick, right? Um, let's say that's a real thing. I don't want Bill Gates or Merck or anybody like that being the ones to handle that situation because they're literally for-profit corporations that are, it's not even like, oh, they're going to put a microchip in us and, this like that sort of like, I'm so since in 2006 there was a doc I covered this in my first episode, Hindsight 2020. There was a documentary that really made a big thing about microchips and vaccines and all this sort of stuff. It was called America Freedom to Fascism. And that it's interesting to see this material is still so prevalent. Just to say, my concern is less about like, oh, the vaccine is gonna chip you, or it's again, there's this real Christian angle of the mark of the beast and all this sort of stuff. And this is so, if you go back through the John Birch Society, if you know the history of conspiracy culture, it'll give you a better sense of where a lot of these ideas stem from. But just to say while that's not my concern, I am concerned with government intrusion and privacy and like the whole concept of that, absolutely. But to say the specificity of like, oh, this is the New World Order masterstroke is they want to push this vaccine to control the population. Motherfucker, they already control the population, right? Like
Right.
this isn't the thing they need is a fucking chip in your arm. Let me tell you something. You're holding it in your hand. You're fucking walking through it every day. You're logging onto it right now. You live and swim and breathe in it. They don't need that. But to say they can certainly make a fuck ton of money off it, and they can certainly, that's billions and billions and billions of dollars in profit if you can get here's an insight. When I was working in a pharmacy during the post 9/11 anthrax scare.
Oh,
Okay, and post 9/11 there was an anthrax scare, and there was one medication that was considered as if you were to get anthrax, this is the drug you needed, and it was a very new and incredibly expensive antibiotic called Cipro. And I remember it was back ordered, and every pharmacy ordered it and stocked up on it. And let me tell you something: 4 people died of anthrax, and that shit sat on our shelves for years. Okay, so we every pharmacy, again, living in New York where there's a pharmacy on every fucking street corner, everyone invested thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into this drug. That was a huge boon for them. Then maybe it was like, remember when H1N1 was? I want to say it was like 2007, maybe 2008. Right. Somewhere in there. I was still working at that point. I was still in the pharmaceutical industry, and same situation. They came out, oh my God, we have this swine flu epidemic. And the drug of choice for that was this thing called Tamiflu, which is a garbage fucking drug. It was known as a garbage fucking drug within the industry, but it became this thing of, oh my God, swine flu. The only thing that's going to be helpful at all is this drug called Tamiflu, which was super expensive. And guess who was invested in Tamiflu? Is Donald fucking Rumsfeld.
Oh, wow.
Okay? So what happens, again, every pharmacy has to stock up on this shit drug that was really expensive and wasn't selling. Like that's the other part of this, is like there are, just like probably in the film industry, it sounds weird to think of it this way, but in the pharmaceutical industry, there's a ton of marketing money that's spent. And if you can't get doctors to write prescriptions for that, it's a failed thing. If people don't like writing for it, if it's not selling, then you failed. You can have a blockbuster, or you can have a fucking flop. It's the same idea, right? If you're not thinking in terms of health, if you're thinking in terms of financial success, Tamiflu was a fucking flop, and they turned that into this huge success with H1N1 scare. Those are some insights of to say, like, I don't trust any of these sorts of situations. I'm fully skeptical. I'm all that sort of stuff. But I think what it comes down to is the other thing is that I would see these drugs come out. They're new and they're expensive and they're untested. And then suddenly we sell a ton of it. And then invariably within 5 to 10 years, you see suddenly, oh, actually, now there's a lawsuit and we don't sell that drug anymore. And all these people got sick off it, and so on and so on. And I have seen that enough. Literally working in the thing where it's like, oh, this is getting pulled off the shelves because a bunch of people got sick and all this sort of stuff. That would be my reluctance for taking a rushed to market, untested vaccine to make Bill Gates a bunch of money. It's less that I think he's the Antichrist and wants to fucking microchip me for Satan. It's more that I think he wants to make a profit off a drug that will be, okay, maybe it works, maybe some people die. What did Donald Trump say today? Yeah, people are dying, it is what it is. They don't care that they're making tons of fucking money. So, I think that's the thing that scares me when someone talks about vaccines and even like a forced vaccination, all that sort of stuff, or those sorts of questions, is it's a way to make a massive amount of money. Yes, it is an infringement of civil liberties. Yes, all these sorts of things. And I ultimately feel like I don't want to be a guinea pig for something like that, just knowing that cycle of the pharmaceutical industry. Sorry, that was a bit long-winded, but that is where I do feel confident in making a statement on that.
Being an old school conspiracy guy like you, and I'm right there with you. What do you make of kind of where things have ended up? I saw this last weekend there was a protest down Sunset Boulevard to kind of speak about child sex trafficking, and in relation to Tom Hanks being a violator, and these people are the adrenochrome thing and all that. Like, it seems like that's where everything's it's all sort of boiled down to, like all of conspiracy culture into this one thing. It's sort of all encompassing, but where do you come out on that stuff? I'm sorry, my documentarian in me is asking.
Yes, that's all right. Yeah, I thought I was going to be interviewing you. That's all right. Let's see. I mean, again, it's something that I think has proven it's in this middle ground for me, where there's enough of it that is clearly true. Exactly like this Epstein thing, which is now a mainstream accepted, like, yep, this is real. there's a Netflix documentary about it. It's apparently real now, or something like that. It seems to be how our culture operates. But of course, yeah, I remember all this stuff when it was a crazy conspiracy theory. I think enough of this stuff has been proven true, but I also know how the conspiracy sausage is made, and I think there are a lot of elements of this that are spun in certain ways. So when you look at like MK Ultra, for example, MK Ultra is a very real program.
Mhm.
There's documentation, and it's absolutely a real thing. But then you have guys like who really popularized MK Ultra as something to be concerned about within culture is Fritz Springmeier, right? Who his thing, his original what do you call the making of a mind-controlled sex slave. I mean, the first 2-3 pages of the book are a special message to the Christian reader. It's how this affects them and how they'll be able to really understand what's really going on here. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, because they have a deeper insight into this sort of battle for good and evil, and the symbolism used and all that sort of shit. The problem is most Christians, and particularly Christian conspiracy theorists, don't know symbolism very well. And they think they do because they're like, oh, yeah, I know what Mark of the Beast is, and I know all this sort of whatever. I'm familiar with these terms and these ideas, but they're really not well versed in symbolism outside of that. And so Fritz Springmeier really popularized this idea of, the Britney Spears puts a hand over her eye, and that's telling you she's part of the Illuminati or she's whatever, And I've seen. So I don't want to. I'm just gonna tell a quick story, and I don't mean to detract from your specific question about sex trafficking and adrenochrome and all that, but to say I watched as that spiked, and then what happened was this whole idea that the pop culture was in the pocket of the Illuminati, and every music video that came out was promoting satanic Illuminati, pedophilia, whatever, whatever you want to lump all as this one thing. And I know a guy who worked for a graphic designer who worked for Rihanna and Eminem, and they were literally talking like, hey, should we put an eye in a pyramid on this album cover because that'll generate more, that'll generate controversy and get more sales. Again, this was a marketing decision, so it's evil in a sense. Yeah. This, if we want to talk real, quote unquote, Satanism or evil, quote unquote, I mean, it's more of a concept. It's the idea of you're lying to sell and manipulate and profiteer. That is evil, so that's true. But the idea that this is this, this organization that has this religious belief or something like that. Yeah, their religious belief is that they want power and money, and it's a religious belief that is shared by most of the Americans who are speaking out against it. So just to say, if you look at this very specific influence of the fundamental Christianity on the conspiracy narrative and how it picks it up and sort of pushes it in this other direction to say, hey, I don't want my kid listening to Britney Spears. Oh, by the way, did I tell you that it's a fucking satanic thing? It's not just, I don't like this music, I don't like pop culture, I don't want my kid to be exposed to whatever. It's also, it's satanic and it's this. And I watch that trend hijack this actually very real conspiracy that you could document and we could put people in jail. We could have, again, if we wanted to be focused and focus our outrage, we could have put people in jail, and instead we decided the biggest culprit was Lady Gaga, and it turns into this weird witch hunt thing. And I feel like the sex trafficking issue has a similar sort of hijacking issue, where it's a very real problem. Undoubtedly, there is a lot of truth to the overall conspiracy theory, and it is something we should be concerned and outraged over. However, I think it's fascinating, again, the sort of trends in which conspiracies get picked up as what's a popular conspiracy. As you say, this is bubbling up right now. Do you know what's not? What's strange to me is that we have a crisis where there are, both with President Obama and Trump, this isn't like a partisan issue, but we have children being kept in camps on the Mexican border. Right now we have situations where I don't know if you've seen any of this footage of like these kids in hotels.
I don't think I have.
Okay, so like basically they're used as an excuse, coronavirus. They didn't want to put these. So normally what would happen is if a child was separated from its family at the border, they would put them in this sort of like almost like a foster care type situation. They'd have a government, schooling and housing and all this sort of stuff while they're being processed. And they're either going to then deport them or try and find a foster parent or try and figure something out. And they'd have this sort of structure. Well, what they're saying, hey, well, we can't run those centers right now. So we have these situations. There's at least three hotels in Texas that are being used as these staging centers for these children. And it's literally kids in hotel rooms, and the kids are putting like signs up against the window. And there's activists outside, with cameras that can point up to it. They tried getting into the hotel, and these like unmarked, these like guys in no uniform, no anything, just like throwing these people out of this hotel, being like, we don't have to tell you who we are, and you can't be in here, and all this sort of shit. But wow. So what, any level of sexual abuse, trafficking, all this, we have this really obvious, very, very obvious area where that whole situation can be conducted out of. But that has become a partisan issue. If you're conservative, then it's like, well, I don't want these fucking immigrants here. Get them the fuck out of here. I don't care about these kids in fucking camps. But you're gonna get on your podcast and tell me you care about, Bill Gates drinking this child's adrenochrome or, little John Bonet or whatever the fuck. I don't feel there's a consistent outrage, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I say that things have been hijacked and politicized, it goes in both quote unquote directions, right? But I guess I'm concerned that the manipulative, sensational, and specifically fundamentalist spin that is put onto this issue is going to do more to detract from it than it will. Using the MK Ultra example, it will do more to detract from it than to really help bring any justice or change or anything like that. One other thing I'll say here is that there is right now what is super popular is this QAnon avenue of conspiracy, right? And they're saying, hey, we're going to save the children. This is all being done to save the fucking children because children are being sex trafficked and Donald Trump knows about it and he's going to save us all and he's going to put all these horrible pedophiles in prison and all this sort of stuff. However, a few things. One, QAnon, you mentioned Tom Hanks. At the beginning of coronavirus, their whole thing was Tom Hanks is in prison for being a pedophile and he's locked up and this is the start of it. And that was the original conspiracy there that was floated months ago was that, hey, this lockdown, coronavirus was a hoax, but a quote unquote good hoax.
Yeah,
this
the
was
roundup
done.
has begun.
Yeah, exactly. The roundup has begun and we're going to use this lockdown as an excuse to get them all. Well, that's a horrifying idea that you'd be championing secret police and even if it's to protect a child. I don't know, the idea that you'd I don't know, like that this is a good we're gonna fake a massive pandemic and lock up people secretly in the night. And this is like the fucking utopia. Like, yeah, we're really...
No, that's not a good thing. There were certain laws, I think I can't remember which president it was, but there were certain laws where kind of the your right to a fair trial was sort of you could be held for an extended period without trial kind of thing. So that goes, but not to stop your flow. Keep going.
Oh,
there were laws passed like that recently.
2011, Barack Obama signed the NDAA, and which allowed for indefinite detention of Americans. Yeah, so it's a very real thing, and that's the average Democrat or liberal doesn't want to admit. It just want to look at the fact that happened under Obama's administration. So again, that's why I'm saying it's not necessarily a partisan issue per se, but so QAnon, right? Their whole thing is, hey, this is great, and we're going to do the roundup, which sounds like fucking crystal knocked to me, but to them it sounded like this great justice was coming. And of course, Tom Hanks is not in pedophile prison. He's making new movies, and he's doing just fucking fine, right?
He seems to be.
right. So, what scares me is that when conspiracy theories like that, we don't hold them accountable when their theories turn out to be false. So if 4 months ago was the Great Awakening and they're going to get Tom Hanks and all this sort of shit, and that clearly wasn't what happened. It's clearly what what happened. However, within the conspiracy culture, the people who peddled that theory have not been discredited. They're still being listened to. And now they're telling you, oh, well, actually, mail-in voting or whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
And we need, once again, what do we need? We need to do some sort of secret raids, and we're going to... So just to say, I'll save that because that's a whole other tangent. But to say, there's a really specific thing that I just stumbled upon in the last 24 hours, which goes into all this. But basically, right now, they are cheering on once again the idea of more secret raids done for the greater good of the country and all this sort of stuff. So I find that whole world terrifying. Of not only are they championing these people who claim to be libertarians and their love freedom and all this sort of stuff, they're championing the idea of secret police tactics. That's terrifying hypocrisy to me. But the other thing is that, when you have your fucking Alex Jones says, oh my God, they're going to do blah, 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 and that shit doesn't happen, why the fuck are you listening to what Alex Jones has to say tomorrow? He should be done. You cross his name off the list. He is no longer a trusted news source. If QAnon says this is the thing that's happening and then it doesn't happen, you don't just get to kick the thing down the field and say, all right, well, okay, that wasn't exactly them, but it's coming soon. It's coming soon. It's always fucking coming soon. And this idea that we still have right now millions of people in America taking this idea of coronavirus conspiracy is here to control us and all this sort of thing, which again is true to an extent. I want to be clear. I'm really concerned about the civil liberties and profiteering and all that sort of shit. But to say this idea that like this was it, this was the end game, and this is the Illuminati New World Order is coming out now to fucking lock us all up. Well, guess what? The only people who are locked up right now are fucking Americans. Everyone else around the world is like basically okay. What maybe maybe the people to listen to weren't the Alex Joneses of the world. And that's not to say like I'm pro Dr. Fauci or any of that sort of shit. I want to be clear. This is not. It doesn't have to be a polarity there. I'm just saying. Yes, the CDC was wrong. Yes, all these things were wrong. But also, Alex Jones was wrong. Yes, QAnon was wrong. Yes, Trump was wrong. So how do we start to... I would love to see a situation where if we can, by process elimination, okay, you said such and such, guess what? Like, you got to go back, get to the back of the line. You no longer get to... tell millions of people what's up on a day-to-day basis. And I don't mean this in like a censorship or canceling way. I just mean this in like a societal, like, what if we all agreed this guy's a quack and we don't, he's done, right? Like,
Totally. No, you're exactly right. And I think that there's little doubt that QAnon is a psyop, a genius psyop, really. I mean, one of the more genius I've ever heard of. And your points are salient. A friend of mine, I'll just toss this at you. A friend of mine, very good friend, trusted friend. He makes films too, documentaries. Something showed up in his inbox that says, "This is the Frazzle Drip video." Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He is, of course, he told me, he's a good enough friend where he told me about it. He hasn't opened it. He's scared to death to open this thing. I mean, not that any of us want to see this thing anyway, but I don't know. What would you encourage someone in that case to do? I mean, would you open it up?
I would also be terrified to open it for like you said, you don't, who wants to see something like that? But also, is that, do you open it and then you get the agents at your house and they're like, hey, you have this thing?
Exactly.
Either because you exposed their plot or because you own something that is probably illegal, essentially is it child porn or murder or, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So something that you could legally be arrested for in daylight, or something that you're whisked away in the night for because you got somebody's information, right?
But you are a documentary filmmaker, and if you open it up and it is real, and
right,
you have Hillary Clinton doing these things on this videotape, I mean, you could really expose something that is just out of this world and put people in jail. You know what I mean?
I guess what I would do. Okay, you want to know? So just, I guess to say, I don't know if you know this about me. I have been the subject of agent harassment, government harassment.
I'd like to know more, though. Yeah, tell me about that.
Wait a week and you can watch a video because I covered in this video.
Oh, cool. Okay.
I've talked about it at length at other places, but anyway. Just to say, I'm someone who also fears, the being whisked away in the night by unmarked agents.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, you're right. So you're a documentary filmmaker, and it's your responsibility to do something. I guess what I would do is get a really cheap fucking laptop. Invest $200 in a cheap laptop, and maybe a VPN or something, and go to a location where you have multiple cameras and witnesses and everything. Like, make it like you're, remember it used to be like, we just unearthed this treasure chest and we're going to open Davy Jones's treasure chest, Al
Capone's vault.
Right. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Al Capone's vault. Do it like that. And literally you set up cameras and there's 5 people in the room and everyone's sitting around and you all open it together. And if it fucking is a virus and it kills your computer, well, then you've just lost $200. And if it's something real, then you've captured that moment. And if government agents show up and they say, hey, you are possessing child porn and you need to go to jail, you have witnesses and cameras and everything. And, that would be my cover your ass,
That's a
but
good
still
idea.
pursue the
Yeah.
truth angle that I would take.
I'm just thankful it's not me, but my friend had sort of done an interview where he sort of, spoke a kind of questioned if Frazzle Dip was real, and then from a source that he trusts, this thing showed up in his box. So I don't know what to. Yeah, I mean, I'll report to you if it'll probably be national news if it's anything. I have my doubts, but I mean that seems to be an pretty incredible story, and I don't know why it would be filmed in the first place, but who knows?
Who knows? Yeah. I mean,
Yeah, I'd be scared. I don't. I'm glad I'm not him. I'm glad I'm not him.
yeah, and just to say, I mean, you also, it could be a total nothing that you get sent. It could be, you, you're sent to a video of some guy talking about it or whatever. And how would you even begin to verify the authenticity of anything like that? Here's one other thing, and I don't mean to muddy the waters. I just want to say we are now in the age of what do you want to call that? Deep fakes,
Yes.
right? I don't mean this as a, I don't know, a detractor, more as a one more obstacle, right? Whereas if you had, if I had in my possession a video of Donald Trump skull fucking Mother Teresa,
Yes.
would that make national news, or would people like, well, that's clearly a deep fake or whatever? And how do you begin? And even if we are just years away from a scandal like that happening, where it is something will come out as a video and the authenticity of the video will be questioned, and that is something that, again, I'm not trying to muddy the waters. I'm not trying to.
No, that is true. But I will say, however, we still seem a few years off, working in the industry, and I'm sure you know this too, that, we've all seen the latest and greatest film that tries to sell CG as actual,
Absolutely.
humanity, and it's still not quite there. So I think if this frazzle drip looks anything like that, you could probably tell, although the darkness
I
of the
think so.
room might help, and it'd be illegal to even fake that, filming that, I would think. That's another point that, I mean, of course, maybe they do it a certain way, but why would someone fake it? That's I don't see that either. But who would fake such a thing? I guess, but who knows?
Well, I
I
mean,
guess politically, I guess, yeah, of course.
right, and so I mean,
Take out Hillary.
I'm like I said, I just want to make it really clear here. I have no love for Hillary Clinton, and I hope Bill goes down for this Epstein thing. But it it would be, I don't know, it would be a shame if Clinton went down for it and Trump didn't. Again, it's the concern of politicizing something where if it's weaponized in a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
and I already see. I mean, I don't know. It's like when you say national news or like once that information's out there, what is done with that information is so crazy to me. Like we literally have Donald Trump on TV saying that he wishes this woman well,
That was crazy. Yeah.
right?
That was
And then his supporters are like, yeah, he's out to like get the pedophiles. And I'm like, what? Not
yeah.
only is he like been there and hung out with them, but he's still like, no, she's great. I hope she's doing well. Like, and anyway, and just to say, it's like the information I think we live in a moment. This maybe is. I'd like your take on this. Maybe instead of me making a proclamation, I'd really like you to weigh in on this. As a documentarian, as someone you're trying to do something where you are capturing information and trying to relay that information to an audience. What does it say that we live in a moment where once that information's out there, it can be politicized, weaponized, twisted, turned in 50 different ways. Are we in need of more, quote, information? Do you know what I'm saying? Would more evidence, we already have the evidence for Epstein, and he's been scot-free for so long. Is there what is the smoking gun, or is... What does more? I guess what I'm really trying to get to you is just maybe even a kind of bigger picture. What does, in this strange era that we're in, what is our role still just to provide objective data for people to utilize however they will, or is it to sort of try and discern what's real in that data? Where do you feel like that's?
It's so tough, man. As you know, that's the conundrum. I mean, if you put out something that sort of fits within, what's trying to be said culturally or in a zeitgeist way, you gotta sort of go with the flow and just kind of shoot forward. If you're putting out something that's kind of at odds with what's trying to be said, I mean, they did this is conspiracy fact for y'all out there, but. And I'm sure you know it anyway, but Project Mockingbird really worked. There's a news flash that worked. There seems to be people in high places across media. Now it's own 5 companies run all of media. That's also seems to be fact. So if you're going to go up against that, which I think that's sort of what you're saying, if you come out with something that's sort of against what the flow of the nation is, and you're going to really upset the apple cart, I think you got to come at it real smart, and you got to, I would make sure you have it, multiple sources and attorneys involved. And it seems like you got to go like that. I mean, look at what's, WikiLeaks and all that, like, look where that's ended up. I'm here for that, man. I think they're doing a number on him in jail. It seems like they're messing with him pretty hard, maybe his brain even or something. I mean, and Trump was supposed to kind of protect that guy. I think even, he should be protecting him.
I agree. He should be protected. He's clearly not being. And then you have, here's another one. It look like a Chelsea Manning or something, right?
Right.
So again, it's like Trump has, if I'm not mistaken, Trump has come out very much against Chelsea Manning, but very much in defense of Snowden. Not Snowden. What the fuck? Total blank.
Which one are you thinking of?
Assange.
From a Julian. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So it's to say, like, I don't know. I think you and I are probably in agreement that, like, overall whistleblowers in general need more protection and support. Right. Not just like, well, this one's convenient because this one's got information on my enemy, so I like this guy. This one has information that actually hurts my reputation. I'm gonna discredit them. I don't know. It's really strange. And then to your point, I think when you're saying, like, if you have something that's going to upset the apple cart, I think what I'm trying to ask is are we in a post-smoking gun era, in the sense of, like, you and I probably both, we're similar age, probably grew up on this idea of, like, the hero reporter, right? Like, if I just get, like, here's the document that proves that,
totally.
this guy, pulled the trigger for JFK, or this guy, here's the I have a signed contract that shows that, Dick Cheney, fucking, killed this child and with his blood wrote out a fucking contract for Halliburton in blood with a child that he raped and murdered on national fucking television. I've got the footage. And I feel like people are like, okay.
We are post that. We are post that for sure, and that's sort of disturbing. I mean, it's not only sort of, it's disturbing. But yes, and we did grow up it, but we are definitely post that. You could come out with, like just like you said, that video or that evidence, and we'd sort of get, hopefully you're discussed around some water coolers. Having said that, there is a way I think that you can. I think you can still upset the apple cart, and I think it's about getting as big and in the news as possible for someone that's kind of coming from the independent side. If you can still do that, you can maybe, challenge what's going on, because once you get, if you come out so strong, and it would take this real coordinated effort, WikiLeaks, they were really kind of doing it. They just, he just found himself into some hot water, down in New Zealand or Australia or whatever it was, and had to be, live inside the embassy there. But I think outside of that, and of course they honey trapped him. I mean, of course, he should have been, whatever. But he was pretty close to kind of, from my perspective, he really was challenging about as high as you can get, as high as you can take down.
Sure. But they caught him. Are you familiar with the Panama Papers?
I mean, I am. I'm not any expert on it, though.
Well, just to say, like, from an independent and documentary perspective, you might be interested. Alex Winter, of all people,
the actor.
Yeah, the actor,
yeah.
Alex Winter.
I know him.
Do you really? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. Yeah. I know.
He made a documentary about the Panama Papers, which is shocking to me. That
I do remember this now. Yeah. Okay.
But to say, like, that's the sort of thing where they were like, people were being, any whistleblower was like, oh my God, like they're fucking murdering people, and we're like, how do we get this information out? And then it got out, and most people, like, again, I think it goes back to what you're saying about Mockingbird, is like the smoking gun, and then the next day the news is like, oh, hey, did we tell you about, Will Smith cheated on his wife or whatever? And it's like, well, okay, distraction. And maybe there are, I think, so when I say here is it's not purely to be negative. I think there is, I think it's just changing strategy is where I'm at. If I may say, is that I no longer believe in the world-shaking revelation. Like if I could get this footage of Dick Cheney out and blah blah blah, whatever, I no longer believe that's the world we live in. However, just like everything else, we live in a niche media environment, right? So the same way that a local garage band can kind of compete with Britney Spears for attention because of the internet, the same way I think you could, if you had this really shocking footage or this really great evidence and all this sort of stuff, you will definitely find the people who respond and respect and will seize upon that information in a good way. I don't, if you, do you know what I mean? Like, to say that if we change our,
you mean like peer, like just getting the, kind of, you said the word, you used the phrase niche, and you mean like they're starting to close down that peer-to-peer stuff. I've noticed that's scary to me. Because I think that could have been a way, like YouTube or something similar could have been maybe that way that you're talking about. But you can see the clampdown coming. I mean, it's already happening.
Yeah,
When
I
you say
guess
changing, yeah, when you say changing things up and really shaking it up, coming at it from a different side, like tell me what you mean.
I think what I'm saying is like maybe your footage doesn't end up on CNN. Maybe it doesn't end up in front of, the world court, but maybe it ends up on a bunch of, computer screens. I guess my point was more about like managing expectations, is to say just because we're not going to get George Bush on trial on pay-per-view, which is what I'd want to see. Well, not pay-per-view, but you know what I'm saying? As much as I'd love to see these war criminals on trial for the whole world to see, we're not going to get that. But what we might get is, hey, maybe you can get millions of people to realize that this person is a war criminal, to wake up to what they're doing and to not support their actions.
I don't I don't think you've heard, Alan, but down in Guantanamo, they've already tried, George W. Bush, and he's been executed. Did you hear that?
Oh no, I didn't hear that.
Yeah,
He's
that
been
came from
executed.
QAnon, straight from QAnon. You didn't hear
So,
that? You haven't heard that at
so
all?
the
That's
guy that's hanging out with Ellen DeGeneres, is that his clone?
right, right. Oh man, yeah, it goes deep now. It gets inventive though. It really gets inventive. I go to sleep wondering if this stuff is how real this stuff is, and it all kind of goes into what you're talking about right now. It's so hard to, it's almost impossible, man. But is there, if you found I don't know, man. I'm trying to think of, if you don't have that smoking gun, you bring it out. Is there another way to do it? Oh boy, it's
Well,
gonna take a lot to
yeah,
figure
it would
out.
definitely take a lot, and again, I feel like there is a again, just maybe managing expectations, and I say that from someone who's just seen the rise and fall of conspiracies, conspiracy personalities, seeing evidence and scandals come and go. But from my own story here, I'm using this final episode of this video I'm making to really tell a very personal story, which I didn't expect to do, but it's just sort of turned out that way. And one of the things I talk about is how being a New Yorker on 9/11, being literally traumatized and then brainwashed. I was like 20 years old. I would have, like, everything that I'm thinking I know about the situation, every person on TV and every adult in my life and everyone made me feel like you don't get it. You don't get it. So I started reading all the newspapers and I started watching all this news. And it wasn't like I was watching like Fox News and all this sort of shit, but just reading. I mean, as you said, it's 5 media companies control everything. So if there's a directive, it's pretty fucking clear, right? So, like I was just looking for some footage about this, what Operation Legend is, this federal agents against the protesters. This is like just from a few weeks ago. So Donald Trump, is just sort of as an example, just this week, just in the last few weeks, Donald Trump announced this thing called Operation Legend. Now, I found a news clip from, like, I don't know, some CBS affiliate from fucking Indiana or something, right? But
Right.
their graphics for this thing, it's like an American flag and Department of Homeland Security seal and these bullet points of, like, so it's this very, like, page. There's nothing else in this newscast has American flags, and it's not like you're watching Fox News and you're, just giant flag in the background for 24 hours. This is like a local news segment. But when they showed the graphic telling you the information about, like, and here's what's happening in Portland, and protesters are trying to do blah, 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 and today Donald Trump announced, and then suddenly the graphic has this American flag on it, and it has these very official seals on it, and it's, it's just like, oh, and 200 agents will be sent to handle protest, blah, blah. It's all said in this very particular way. My point, using that as an example, is to say you don't have to be eating the really rancid fucking propaganda out of Fox News in just to get propagandized. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, my personal story is that after experiencing the traumatic event of 9/11 and then trying to consume as much news as I could, within a few years, I ended up voting for George Bush in 2004, like, which is so out of my anything that I would have thought prior or after or anything about myself. But I had been convinced that, like, okay, well, this is the situation and this is what you're supposed to be doing, is supporting this person, and like, well, this is what's happening, and I literally just documenting my own cognitive dissonance and going through that experience and then like snapping out of it and what that whole experience felt like. And as I watch now, how I think I have a perspective now of not only how grand of a scale that's operating on, but like certain nuances and certain things that I just see being repeated over and over and over again. And so when I say, we talk about the smoking gun, we talk about the media control, we have to realize that that narrative is being pushed even when we don't realize it. Even if we're, let's say you're like a liberal guy watching MSNBC, you're still getting corporate Republican propaganda. Whether you realize it or not, you are, you're essentially a useful idiot for them. If you're watching Fox News, you're of course getting this, really specific propaganda. But no matter where you're sort of coming at this, that mainstream information source is highly controlled. And if your expectation is, I will release this video and they're going to have to report on it. Well, even if it was something that was so shocking that they had to report on it, they would still spin it in such a way. I mean, like, I literally have been watching footage of, like they're able to show footage of cops beating innocent, like peaceful people in the street, and they're like, well, these crazy rioters, and we really gotta like crack down on the Marxist terrorists. And I'm like, the motherfuckers are sitting there playing the violin. They're literally sitting there playing the violin, and you walk up and you fucking spray pepper spray in their face and you tear gas the crowd. Why would you do that? But you're able to spin that as like, well, that's anyway. I guess my point though is that, however, there are going to be a percentage of people who see that and who are, for lack of a better term, I hate this term. It's become so sort of used and abused, but like the idea of waking up, right? This idea of like, this used to be this conspiracy idea of like, oh, if we could just get this information out and wake people up to the fact that this is happening. Well, we see now that what Alex Jones meant by waking up the population was that he becomes a famous celebrity and makes millions and millions of dollars. He was not interested in actual political reform. However, for many of us, maybe guys like you and I, seeing certain things, being exposed to certain things, it has awoken something within us. And it is, whether that's a quest for knowledge or justice or truth or, stepping away and having skepticism for what's on your nightly news or anything like that. And that's what I'm really trying to say about managing your expectations, is that smoking gun, even if it's never going to put, the world, the Illuminati reptilian Black Pope, hanged in Times Square, even if that doesn't happen, what could happen is that 50 fucking guys like you and I who are like, oh shit, you know what? Maybe here I am, and I'm like, well, I'm somewhat dismissive of, how the sex trafficking conspiracy is being used and manipulated as a political device. Maybe if I saw this frizzle drip video of Hillary Clinton shitting on this child's face, I would, maybe it would spark some outrage, and I would have more sympathy, or whatever, right? And saying like, we can't we can't expect to save the world with any piece of evidence at this point, but maybe we can still influence people and still share information that helps them come to some sort of
Oh, absolutely, man. And I started thinking about it more. And, when we think of the smoking gun or exposing the smoking gun, we think about, what immediately pops into my head is, you know, I think I'm back to 12 years old again because I think of someone going on the news program and doing this. Well, I don't think with this new generation it's about the news program or, it's not about Channel 10, Fox Channel 10. It's about other things. I think when I think of my kids, I have a 16-year-old and a 12-year-old, and they don't go to the news for their information, of course. They watch TED Talks or it's on someone speaking on Snapchat or whatever. I think it's kind of at least me, I have to check myself often because I still think like I did when I was younger that the news is exposed on the news. Well, I don't think to this new generation it is. And I also think that, of course, if this, let's say this frazzle drip video is real and my friend has it and he wants to expose it, I still think we might live in a post-truth era, but we still live in an era where that's going to affect people. If you get that out and it's real. Oh, I was also going to say that also more than ever, I was just listening to a couple of friends talk the other day that we are living in an era where video can be analyzed like never before and proclaimed true or not true. I mean, there's a reason why NASA suddenly lost all the original footage.
right.
Because that could, if that were put up to any kind of scrutiny, it would be a gigantic fail. So conveniently they lost, or they taped over. Sorry, they taped over all that footage. Literally some of the most valuable footage the world has ever known. They recorded over it. But if that was put up to any scrutiny, they're done. And I imagine Frazzle Drip could be put up to that same scrutiny. Now, fighting against the beast system, whatever that is, and getting on their news, and they're going to always have a counter story. But I don't know I don't know if you've experienced this, but it seems like the generation that I'm talking about, they do operate a little differently than we always have. Do you see that or no?
Absolutely, yeah. No, absolutely. But I think there's a cycle. Okay, so can I give you one more
Sure.
stupid quick story? Is to say, when I was a child, I remember hearing adults talk about the JFK assassination, and like whether it was something we watched on TV or even just, like I said, adult conversations. It always had this sort of tone of like, well, of course it wasn't Oswald. Of course there's a conspiracy. And I remember as a child being like, but how could that be? That there wasn't like a rebellion. Like, if you think there's a fucking conspiracy to kill your president, didn't like the people rise up and fucking put him in jail? And like, how do we just go about our day-to-day lives?
Dude, I feel I was the exact way, not to interrupt, but I feel and felt the exact way you just described. But go ahead.
So that was my childhood experience, and my whole life I felt like I wanted to understand that. How could it be? How could it be that wasn't this huge, this is the moment that we all wake up or whatever, right? And then at 20-something years old, like 9/11 happens. And within a few years, suddenly it's like, oh, okay, here's this conspiracy and here's this stuff. And then suddenly by like 2011, I was like, oh shit, I now understand. We didn't have a rebellion. 60. I think the poll that I quote in my series is there was a 42%. And I believe this is from Vanity Fair. 42% of Americans believed that there was some sort of government inside job situation for 9/11, and yet nothing happened. That's 42% of Americans like, oh, something happened. And now here we are 20 years out and people are like, oh, I don't know, maybe something happened. So maybe even if they think it was a conspiracy or they don't know or they don't care, it's literally it. We've all just moved on. And now we are the the grown-up adults in the situation, and your children are probably going to live in the situation with a coronavirus conspiracy of the same fucking situation. Was it real? Was it not? Why didn't they why didn't this happen? Why didn't that happen? I feel like there's something to these cycles of like, now I can kind of understand why this massive change didn't happen. That doesn't mean we stop trying to expose it, but
I mean, it's just being, this may be irresponsible to say, but do you foresee ever a time where the people have had enough and they rise up against whatever's going on now? Or
no, I don't know. Can I put a pause on that question?
oh
I'm
yeah,
so sorry. I just got to
course,
check in one second. Hold on.
Yeah, please.
Very sorry. Hold on.
No worries.
Sorry, I just want to see how my CIA handler wanted me to answer that question.
Oh, okay, good. I was figuring you're doing that, so that's yeah. And no, it's the only reason I asked that. I'm certainly not advocating that idea, but it just I've never heard so many people talking about it, and so I thought I'd just toss it to you. I don't even know how successful it would even be. It sounds horrible.
It sounds horrible, yeah.
Yeah, of course. There are some real problems in this country, though. Some real problems, and we are not heading the right direction. That's clear. I don't know. It's going to take something major or massive to kind of shake us up and get us headed the right direction. I heard someone speaking today, and they said this isn't where we're at right now. We can't vote our way out of it. Maybe for the first time in history. That scared me a little bit.
Yeah. I have to say I'm terrified about this election because, well, it's even as an old. It's funny because I have people who have said to me in the last year, like, "You're a conspiracy theorist. What do you like? The election doesn't mean anything." And I'm like, well, maybe not from, again, like a corporate oligarchy perspective, but I think from a day-to-day lived-in experience, it does. And at least for us who are living through it. Just to be clear, again, under Barack Obama, he invaded a lot of fucking countries and bombed a lot of people and sent a lot of drones to murder many, many people around the world. It was seen as a better time for us Americans because we weren't the ones getting beaten in the streets. Mm-hmm. So to say I just want to be clear, is that I am fully acknowledge that there's I refer to it as the do it to Julia phenomenon from 1984, right? When Winston Smith is confronted with, like, okay, this is the thing you fear most, and just at the moment he's like, just don't do it to me, do it to fucking anyone, do it to this woman that I love, I don't care, just don't do it to me. So he screams, do it to Julia. Mm-hmm. And I feel like we live in a world, we live in a country, at least, I could say us as Americans, we live in a country where that's our reaction to a lot of things. Of like, we freak out when our civil liberties are imposed. Whenever, like, again, a George Bush or a Donald Trump comes in and we can see, oh, they're very clearly fucking with us personally, we freak out. And then you get a Barack Obama and you're like, hey, my stock portfolio is doing pretty well, and I get to proudly walk down the street as a liberal. There's a black guy who's president, and everything's great. I don't have to think about those people being murdered, on the other side of the globe. So to say, I overall have a general skepticism about politicians and all that sort of stuff. However, that being said, I do think where we are, like right now, like right fucking now, is terrifying because I don't know where, I don't know what your politics are or whatever, but I really don't like Donald Trump. I think that's a really bad situation for us.
It is, yes. I don't like any. I'm not into either side. I kind of
Sure, yeah,
I think voting and on the local level does still matter, but I think nationally, I doubt it does. And I think both. I think we're dealing with one globalist kind of thing going on. I think both sides are the exact same. Look, you said it yourself. Obama kind of just expanded and worsened a lot of the George W. Bush problematic areas, and that was a shocker. I think that was sort of the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people, where they just saw it right there. Wow, you know.
yeah.
For me, it was. You never would have saw that coming, really,
I
or maybe.
well,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I guess I was a conspiracy theorist by 2008, so I wasn't shocked, but I was shocked that 4 years in, my liberal friends were like, I mean, I was shocked at a month in. So the first Barack Obama's first month in office, he literally invaded Pakistan. He bailed out. He said that $1 trillion TARP bailout for the banks, and he signed a protection, an NSA protection for all these like phone companies that had partaken on spying on American citizens. He signed a protection that made them basically like immune from prosecution. That was his first month in office. So what did I mean? Like, to me, that shows you your priorities right up front. And I felt like I returned to all my liberal friends, like, hey, look at this. Like, and they're like, oh, stop it. He's fighting Congress doesn't, or whatever the fuck they say. It's like, whatever excuses you make for your guy. And again, I mean, I get it from being in that weird moment in 2004 where I was sufficiently propagandized in 2004 to briefly hold that brainwashed space. I understand that's where they were,
Talk about moments too. That moment that you captured, and I think you were absolutely right, where Trump officially decided that he was going to run for president. I think you did nail that one too.
Oh yeah,
I
yeah. That's
think you got it. You're the first person I've ever heard talking about that for sure. And you can see it kind of as that camera sort of like it's sort of creeping in on Trump and you can see the wheels are turning.
yeah. It's well, I think that was from just to say that clip right there. I do show from it was a PBS episode, and I want to say like a Frontline. I think it was PBS Frontline, and that is Roger Stone speaking, and Roger Stone is the one who says he thinks that was the night Trump decided to run for.
Well, I was talking about when I mean Obama's on stage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Okay, okay.
Yeah. So
So
just say, I mean, I used a clip from, I didn't interview Roger Stone, but PBS did. And there's a clip of him saying that. And,
okay. So you don't feel that way then?
oh, I absolutely do. No,
Okay.
sorry. I was using that as supporting evidence. I just,
I got you. No,
when you
yeah. I
said
got
that you said you think I'm the first one to point
you.
that out, is to say,
Okay.
well, I was trying to be uh, intellectually honest and say, well, clearly
I,
I'm not the first one to think
I
that.
think the reasons why Roger Stone would say that and the reasons you say that would be different, though. Yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah.
uh, I agree, yeah. Um, but just to say, so yeah, I'm terrified because I'm in a space where I really don't like Joe Biden. So, okay, in 2016, I really didn't like Hillary Clinton, really didn't like Donald Trump. And I'm like, well, this is, again, it's all the same thing and blah, blah, blah. And I didn't vote in 2016. And of course, every Democrat has used that as like, I'm the one who cost them the election, not because they ran a horrific cunt against, as the president of the United States, but that because I didn't vote, it's my fault Donald Trump is president, right? And here I see the same thing. And it was this week where I was like, oh, and again, I don't like Joe Biden, but I'm already, having those arguments with liberal friends of like, you have to do it, and how could you even consider not voting for Joe Biden? Do you want Donald Trump? It's like, of course I don't want Donald Trump, but why Joe Biden, really? I don't. Anyway, so already I've lost friends in the last few months, like literally lost good friends over me saying, I don't think, as I just said, I don't know that I could vote for Joe Biden. I don't know that it matters. I don't know if it's a big enough difference. I'm really insulted by the fact that they picked him to run, of all people. I really don't think I could do that. And they're like, well, come on, like, how could you? You have to. And I'm like, I just don't know. And literally saying I don't know was enough for me to lose friends.
Have they seen those creepy videos where Biden's smelling?
I'm sure. Well, in their mind, everyone says it's not about Joe Biden. It's not about Joe Biden. It's about getting Trump out, or it's about Supreme Court. And I will say, I mean, when we talk about things like on a local level, and particularly we talk like Supreme Court stuff. I mean, I think there is a point there. I don't know that I agree with it. Again, because I see, again, I just saw what Obama did. But I also saw that, so if you remember, like, Obama was against gay marriage. He was able to be pushed on that issue. Where
that was strange. That was also strange.
Yeah.
I mean, so
the question is, like, maybe you can push these guys on certain things. However, look, I mean, coming to you as a realist is like, to be real with you, I'm highly skeptical that Biden would be any way different, or remarkably different. I'm fully, like you, I think there is a global corporate oligarchy, and it really doesn't matter if it's Biden or Trump in a lot of ways. However, I do think there is a difference, even psychologically, and from like a vitriol and a sort of just like the volatile nature that Trump will gladly push for a civil war, or at least let a bunch of us fucking die in a struggle, or something. There's a specific flavor of the Trump hysteria and what he ferments in his supporters that is, I don't know, it's particularly scary. So I would have been, let's just say that as much as I agree with you about that statement, I was tempted. I was like, if I'm just being completely honest with you, I'm like, well, it's just bad enough. It's just bad enough that maybe I have to vote for Biden. Like, maybe it's like, maybe I don't like it, and I feel totally manipulated, and I'm not even convinced that it's going to make a difference, but maybe this is just scary enough that I have to fucking do that. And that's where I was this, like, after Trump announces Operation Legend, and there's all these federal troops going into cities and all this sort of stuff. And I'm like, okay, maybe I have to do that. And then literally the same week, the Democratic National Platform announced they're not supporting Medicare for all or even marijuana reform. Biden says, yeah, we have to lock up the anarchists. He mentions that his idea of police reform is shooting people in the leg. Instead of shooting, instead of like choking this guy till he dies, you should just shoot him in the leg. That's police reform, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So it was this week that I realized I had this terrifying realization that I'm like, oh, I think they're trying to lose, because it's the marijuana thing, which is not like, it's not like a deal breaker for me. I don't mean it like, oh, I would have voted against fascism, but he won't give me marijuana. It ain't like that. What I'm saying is that we live in 2020 where it's so, like, I thought that debate was already over. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Absolutely.
If you would assume that if you were even if you're trying to get elected as the president as a Democrat in the year 2020, 2020,
You can check those boxes, man. They
like
should
yeah, like
be
you
able to
don't.
check
That's
those
not even
boxes.
a
Yeah.
question, right? Like that's a give me. That's a like. All right, maybe I don't get Medicare. Maybe I don't get police reform. Maybe I don't get any of these things. But at the very least, I expect that man to say, yeah, 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 marijuana, sure, sure. The
Exactly.
fact that they're not willing to do that says to me that, again, goes back to this idea of a global corporate oligarchy is they would prefer to lose. They would prefer to run the absolute worst campaign they possibly can,
They seem to be
lose.
doing just that. They seem to be
Yeah,
doing just that. Yeah.
seem to be doing just that, and then they can lose, and then they can blame it either on Trump's rhetoric or guys like you and I who like, oh, I don't know if I could vote for Biden. Like, oh well, you didn't support us, so it's your fault. Um,
They do better, I think, in a Trump as president kind of scenario. You
yeah,
might be right, and just barring any kind of last minute, you know, Hillary sliding in somewhere to stand in. I mean, I've heard a lot of that talk. I'm sure you have as well. I don't know if that's what the legality of that even would be, or that's
months
how it
ago, I was open to like anything like that happening. At this point, I don't think so.
might be too late. I mean, I think it even goes. I mean, I think hardcore dyed-in-the-wool Democrats were pretty disappointed with Biden's, vice president, you know, choices, weren't they? I heard a lot of that.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no one was even impressed by those. So they really seem to be going out of their way to lose. And I think you bring up a good point. That might be exactly what they're going for. A president who can't even have a debate, really, who's not mentally there enough to have a debate. That's never happened before. Um, I don't know. Yeah, they seem to be. I mean, she seems pretty in charge, large and in charge right now. So
Right, and she benefits from having a villain that she can point to. It's the same thing, right? So like Trump says, Black Lives Matter, Marxist anarchists, like which are three different things, but like
right.
whatever, right? He gets to point and go like, those are the enemy and get you scared, and then you support him. And the Democrats do the same thing. They're like, oh, look, Donald Trump and these guys enemy scary, so you're not going to question. You'll keep voting for fucking Nancy Pelosi and Joe Biden because it's seen as an alternative. And unfortunately, that yeah, so they use each other for that purpose, and it's very very sad. It's very very sad. You asked the question, do I see an uprising? I mean, I gotta say, I don't, at least for now. Not. I think people are going to wait to see what happens with this election. If you look though, so Donald Trump has already positioned himself that if he loses, he's saying like he's already stated, oh, it's because of election fraud or whatever, right? So he's already got an excuse in place for why he could challenge that or whatever. Um,
I'll just say,
and go
not to,
ahead.
not to intercede, but for the first time in my life, at least, I could. The reason why I asked the question is I can start to see just a little something there because never before in my life have people been told they can't go to work, and then to see that followed up by this. I mean, $600, a week is not anything to scoff at. It's for people that are told they can't work, and there are no jobs right now to even go to work. There's 4 or 5 people per every job opening in this country right now. So that's not going to get better for a little while. I don't know what people, we live there's a very thin line. It's a thin veil between total chaos and anarchy. We see that all over the world. How quickly are we going to move toward that people can't feed their families. It happens pretty quick.
Correct. Well, so just to say, I agree. Sorry, so I was thinking about how I wanted to, but yes, you make an excellent point. And you would think if you were a Democrat that wanted to win this election, you'd be talking about that. You'd say, hey, we're going to really make sure we're taking care of people. We either stop bailing out these billion-dollar corporations. Maybe we start taxing a few. Now we've got the world's first trillionaire. Maybe he could pay some fucking taxes.
Right. Gates could help us. He could send. I mean, he literally can afford to send all of us like a few $1,000s, right?
Right. Yeah. Bill Gates wants to play this fucking philanthropist on TV. Oh, I'm here to say I just want to help people. Yeah, you could fucking help me.
Yeah.
Pay my fucking rent, asshole.
Exactly. He could send each of us a few grand, I'm sure.
But exactly. But they're not going to do that, and they're not going to tax Jeff Bezos, and they're not going to, donate money to out-of-work Americans, and they're all this sort of situation. So that's definitely a bleak scenario. But then the other side of it, so like I said, is Trump has not only have the Democrats. This is why I still think there is. All right, the conspiracy mindset that I landed on after many years of being in this was sort of like a mafia situation. So instead of like there's one megalithic conspiracy, and Donald Trump and Joe Biden are having martinis at night and laughing about the trick they're pulling on Americans, is that yes, they serve the same interests and the same masters and all that sort of stuff, but they're still egotistical men who want to have power and want to be in that position, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when Nancy Pelosi fights against Donald Trump, yes, it's convenient and she kind of needs him there. It's the like Batman Joker thing, right? They need each other. So yeah, they need each other to stay in power. But the other thing is that she really does want to be in fucking power. And Donald Trump really does want to fucking be in power. So there is competition. It's like as much as there is collaboration, there's also competition, and that's why I say it's more like a mafia than like a monolithic structure, at least in my estimation. And so when you see that Donald Trump has already set himself up to say that the election is fraudulent, and I was just looking at this thing on QAnon, I was reading some of their stuff today. I was for a totally different reason, and they are saying the greatest, most important event in all of human history is the 2020 presidential election. Wow. That's the language they're using.
Mm-hmm.
So I think those guys are setting themselves up for, if Trump loses, that they would want, and you can claim it's fraudulent, that they wouldn't mind some sort of coup type action as saving the country from Marxist anarchists, whatever. And so that's frightening. And you could have an uprising there. As far as like an uprising that I'd support, I don't see that happening, because so when the Black Lives Matter protests started, I think they're pretty well intentioned. Just to say, that's my estimation. I've gone to a number of their street actions, and it reminds me a lot of like Occupy Wall Street.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they like actually speaking to people and seeing where they're at. It's is, like I said, really has an energetic like an Occupy, and that's something I can get behind, but it has the same, I don't know, blind spots that Occupy had, and a lot that most protests have, is that they're not unified. Donald Trump can paint them as this unified, monolithic, like Antifa organization, whatever, but that's not the reality. You go to a protest, and every person you speak to has a different reason for being there,
Mm-hmm.
and they're a different sort of ideal outcome and thought of like what the solution would be. Are you defunding the police? Are you demilitarizing the police? Do you just want better laws and accountability? Do you this? Do you that? For a lot of people, it is this class issue, again, like an Occupy, of like it is a bigger issue. I wish to God, like, I'll say this: if I saw a Black Lives Matter protest that went and protested in front of an Amazon headquarters, for example, then I'd start to take it very seriously, because that would mean, hey, we realize that, like, you go directly to the source of your oligarchy, right? Literally, who has a fucking $1 trillion? Who is utilizing black labor and not paying them fucking, making them wear diapers to work in a fucking warehouse? Who are the modern day slavers? Um, if people woke up to that level where they made that connection of like, oh shit, this really is a class struggle, and um, that sort of thing, I would be more inclined to think that there was a movement like that happening here. But instead, what I see is young kids who are incredibly well intentioned, um, but maybe just desperate enough that, yeah, no one's going to cry over a broken window here or there. So people are able to paint them as violent, I don't think they're the source of any kind of real violence. I think it's or even, unfortunately, any real revolutionary change. I think they're, but again, maybe when people are getting evicted, when if you have families that are out on the street and you're getting evicted and there's no fucking jobs, and
You don't know where
yeah,
the meal is. Yeah, it's, oh boy. I don't know. Yeah, it's. I hope we don't get there. I hope we don't get there. But these are some real wild times, man, and it's we definitely need we need to keep our cameras on, and we need people like you, and possibly me, just aiming our cameras at this stuff, because it still does sway popular kind of thinking. I believe, at least I have to believe, or I wouldn't do what I do.
yeah, and that's why just to say, yeah, I think you're right. It does have an effect. That was why I was like, hey, maybe we don't have the smoking gun that changes the world overnight, but maybe you still make a difference. You can still make a difference.
Absolutely.
And
Seen it
um,
hundreds of times with all kinds of films and filmmakers, and I mean, I feel that people still, we've always, I've always felt like people they'll always hear or see the truth, and it'll rise to the top and be, kind of come forth. And I still believe that. I mean, maybe that's a little naive, but it's the truth can be felt, I think. Just as you can feel the lies I mean, you can feel and understand the lies coming forth. No one believes their politicians. No one. And,
right.
lying does matter. It seems to matter less than it mattered 20 years ago. Sure, it does. I don't know why that happened. It's hard to say. But are we quite at the fall of Rome era? I don't think we're there either. So we'll see. But it's complicated, man. It's just as all their tricks are. They're really good at all these games they play. They're really good at it.
Yeah.
And but bullshit, I think, still can be read. But hey, man, I hate to say this, but I gotta jump. I gotta be back in there in 9 minutes. So
Yeah, it's been a bit of a marathon I didn't expect, but I
no, it's been a
appreciate
great
it.
talk, man. Yeah, thank you so much. And I definitely do. I would like to talk to you further, and just give me a few days or a week or something, and
I would yeah, just to say I would
after you get done with your thing. How about
yeah,
that?
how about yeah. So
Yeah.
I will yeah, I need this next week to 10 days just to really like finish what I'm doing. And then it doesn't mean that you have to be on my schedule, but to say I'll shoot you an email when I'm done,
Cool. Well,
and we can
great.
just have like a phone conversation if that's we don't have to record it. We don't just chat,
Let's
and you
just
can tell me about your idea, and we can sort of go from there. And
let's do it, man. I love that, and I wish you luck on your piece. I can't wait to, from just a fan standpoint, I can't wait to check it out.
yeah, and I would, if you have anything that you want to send my way that I can watch yours, I feel like I really expected tonight that I'd get to pick your brain a little bit more, but I want to familiarize myself with more of your work, and if you have any links or anything you want to send my way, I would love to check it out. So
And man, I'm a documentarian, so I'll always, I know a lot of your stuff, so I like to kind of just being able to ask you the question. I think it turned out to be a pretty good convo, so we'll
I think
see.
it was great. Yeah. All right, man. Have a great night. Thank you for talking, and good luck with what you're doing. I really can't wait to see what you come up with.
I'll send you some stuff, and it was great talking to you, Alan. Take care,
Please,
man.
yeah. Thank you. Be well.
Bye bye.